Good evening, everyone. It is March 17th, 2021, and we are going to start our legislative session. But first, I think the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the
to the
flag
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Let me just set myself up. I have too many tablets here. Hold on a second.
Okay, Trustee Fritchie?
Present.
Trustee White?
Present.
Trustee Lopez?
Here.
Trustee Quesada?
Here.
Mayor Levin?
Here.
Okay. Whenever you're ready for mayor's and trustees announcements.
Okay, thank you. Okay, folks, good evening. We're going to start with mayor's and trustees announcements. Looking around the gallery, does anybody have?
I can start, Mayor.
Great.
I want to start by offering a moment of silence from us for one of our neighbors to the north. A trustee, John Habib, died recently at the young age of 58. And he's the one that I had the pleasure of working with, that I got to see his love for Croton. And it's a real loss for their community and for his family. And so a moment of silence, please, for Trustee Habib. Thank you. I'd also like to mention there has been some coverage about the violence against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in this country. And there was an incident in Atlanta that ultimately resulted in the loss of life. But it is not unique to communities that see violence in that way. Everyday violence against Asian American folks in our community is happening and is not okay in big ways and small. And we do have a population of Asian folks that live in our community, that work in our community, that visit our community, and their safety and their ability to walk around our community knowing that we have their back, that violence against Asian Americans will not be accepted in Ossining or anywhere in this country, but it starts here in our community where we have our locus of control. I want to name that while I haven't run this by the Board of Trustees, I can say, knowing them as human beings, that they stand against violence against anyone, and in this case specifically, our Asian American neighbors. So know that we stand with you and that we'll do what we can to spread love and to stop the hate. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I have a little bit more to say about that when we're done, so thank you for bringing that up. Any other trustees with announcements, please? Looking at the gallery, somebody raise their hand if they have something to say. Thank you, Manny Quesada.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Omar, for those words. I know that every day we find something, you know, to care about in our community, how deeply sorry we are of the loss of someone. I do have two quick announcements. One is early this week, it was attached with the mayor's announcements. Thank you, Jamie, for creating, thank you to the whole board to creating the survey that actually went out in regards to the seal. So please take a look at the mayor's announcements. And I believe, Jamie, we're going to be putting that in the social media, which I think you did already. So please, I'm calling the members of our village to please take a look at the survey. We need your feedback on this, and we can take it to the next level after we get the survey to be completed. A little bit of a good news, I guess, on my end. I do want to congratulate someone that I know personally for many years. Is actually my belief I think, and I'm hoping I'm right, he's the first Peruvian and the first Spanish mayor in Portchester. So I want to send a big congratulations to Luis Marino, who actually won his election as the first Spanish mayor in Portchester. Portchester has a different way to do their elections is in March, which is I still many years that I've been involved in politics, I still don't understand how that works, and I'm not about to actually start understanding that now. But I definitely want to congratulate Luis Marino again for being the first Spanish mayor in Portchester. And again, I believe he's the first Peruvian mayor that I'm aware of in Westchester County. So big congratulations to him. That goes in. I don't have any additional announcements made.
Great. Trustee Fritchie, anything?
Yeah, a couple little things. So Saturday, I had gotten my first Moderna shot, and I had it done at Hudson Pharmacy on a recommendation of someone that doesn't even live in the village. It was a friend of mine. So go do it. If you can get it, go get it. Very, I want to give them props. They're very professional. They have their act together, and you were in and out. They even made you sit there for 15 minutes to make sure you felt okay. So if you can get signed up for a shot or give them a call, see if they get in. You know, sometimes there's cancellations. You put your name on the list. You know, so right now I think the age is down to 60. So I'm not going to say that I went in there because I'm going to say I went in as a firefighter. Anyways, speaking of firefighter, we had a fire the other night at about 2:30 in the morning, and nobody was hurt. It was, room and content, but it was caused by a space heater. But it was caused because the space heater was plugged into a cord, all right, or an extension cord. And people take these Home Depot extension cords for granted. They're not made to hold or run those things. So you should directly plug it into an outlet or not use it at all. But luckily the girl upstairs was awake, smelled the smoke, and we got there, and it was a good stop on the department. But more on a safety issue, if you're going to use the heaters, please read the instructions. All right. And between those and candles, they're the number one causes of fires right now. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Trustee White, anything?
No, not tonight.
Thank you. So I'm going to change my order of what I was going to discuss. It's going to be 5 pieces here, I think. First of all, let me talk about the seal, since Deputy Mayor Quesada brought it up. We ask that you fill it out. We ask people for the relationship to Ossining, because this is a Village of Ossining seal, and it's important to us that folks who live here or work here, have a relationship with the village, are the ones that participate in the survey. Please, I beg of you, if you want your voice heard, please fill out the survey and click submit. Going on Facebook, Twitter, or any other social media, or writing us notes about your feelings about the seal, while will be answered and will be looked at, does not a survey count. Surveys have specific purposes, and we're going to count the surveys. You're welcome to all your opinions, but we are not going to look at any of the Facebook, social media, any of that, and count that in as survey results. So I beg you to fill out the survey as much as you can. It gives you examples. We've put it together as a group. It took a little bit longer than we had hoped, but it doesn't matter because we're in March, and that's still pretty good. Once we get the survey, as Deputy Mayor Quesada said, we'll take to the next step, which is make some decisions based on what we learned from the survey. So we're going to wait to hear about that. And I want a special shout out to my colleagues on the board who put the survey together. Thank you for all of that. To what Trustee Lopez discussed, hate crimes have gone up in the past 4 years in anywhere from 4 times to 7 times as much as they were 4 years ago, depending on the group that you're looking at and the study that you're looking at. And none of that matters, because as long as it's going up, it's going up. So I want to make people aware. Just a couple of days ago, County Executive Latimer and District Attorney Mimi Roca put out a press release. I want to draw your attention that they are starting a campaign together. It's really from the DA's office called #SpeakUpWestchester campaign. I'm going to give you some information. It's going to be a lot. But then I'm going to ask that it be put on our website so that people can look for it. Here's the gist of this entire campaign. The gist of the campaign is that if you see someone being intimidated, bullied, whatever, based on a hate crime, or you're a victim of hate, that there are, I'm going to count, I think, 4 or 5 places you can get help from and call. I'm going to say it so it goes on the record. If you need emergency assistance because you're a victim or you see someone being victimized, you can call 911. If you're a victim of violent attack, you should call your local police department. If you were the victim of an incident of bias, hate, or discrimination, call the Westchester County Human Rights Commission, 914-995-7710. Email humanrights@westchestergov.com. If you go on westchestergov.com, you actually will get, it'll show you all the things that the government at the county level does, and you'll find it there as well. You may also report incidents of bias, hate, or discrimination anonymously with or without your contact information at westchestergov.com/bias reporting. Don't worry if you're not getting all this. Don't worry if it's making you nervous. Well, you will put it on the website so people can get this information. This just came out. If you're a victim or witness of a hate crime or bias incident, call 914-995-TIPS, TIPS, or visit www.westchesterda.net. So they're giving you a few different places to get in touch. There is a whole point to their press release. It isn't just whether you're a victim. It's also if you see someone being victimized for hate crime. They also do make it very clear that while hate incidents do not always violate the law, they should always be reported. So you may ask, what is a hate crime? What's a definition? In addition to Googling it, if you think somebody's being bullied and discriminated based on their religion, race, any other category that you think falls into this, just call them and describe the situation or scenario. And again, the local police is another place you can call. In that vein, this week, I, as the mayor of the village, I joined in over 400 mayors across the country to sign up to Mayors United Against Anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism and hate crimes, religious hate crimes against Jewish people have gone up 7 times in the past, 7 times what they used to be in the past 4 years. This accounts for about 60.2% of all hate crimes in the country for a population that makes up about 2% of the national population. So it's a disproportion. I didn't get the number for the Asian immigrant stats there, but I have been reading a lot, as Trustee Lopez had mentioned. Hate crime in the last 4 years against Asian American, Chinese Americans has skyrocketed. And in New York, in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, small towns, big cities, it's just skyrocketed in this country in the past 4 years. So I appreciate my colleagues for bringing this up. Nothing good happens. Nothing good happens from this situation. And the only good thing that I would say is that we all have a responsibility to speak up when we see something. It doesn't have to be happening to us. If you see it, speak up. I would also, on a different note, like to wish everybody a happy St. Patrick's Day, not a holiday. I celebrate, to be honest with you. I do put my green outfits on, mostly because I happen to love the color, but I wanted to wish a happy St. Patrick's Day to all descendants. You know, Irish Americans and Irish immigrants that we still have coming to this country. So I took the opportunity to learn a little bit about it, because when I grew up in a very big Irish Catholic community, and I didn't actually know what it was. So I figured, let me take the opportunity. So I thought it was really great to find out that actually it started in the United States. The partying, the celebrations, and the parades are not an Irish event. It's actually a religious event in Ireland. It is actually an American institution, and the green color is not actually St. Patrick's color. His color apparently was blue. It's a totally American institution, and it is a political statement. The parades are actually political protest against the prejudice against Irish Catholics in the United States. And that's really how it started. To show you that we really truly are a mosaic in this country. It depends on what decade and century you're looking at us. I hope I'm not stealing anything from Dana White. She usually gets this better than I do, but I just thought it was interesting. I also thought it was interesting with the advent of television. People in Ireland started seeing how much partying was going on in the US, and now it's a huge part of their culture. They copied the American system, and now over 1 million people do a parade every year in Ireland, copying the American celebratory event. So, you know, it's just a little tidbit for a lighter note for members of our community that are of Irish descent. And on that happier note, I think we can move on to the rest of the meeting. And I think the next piece of this meeting, the next piece is Village Manager Karen Diatori and her report.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody. Happy St. Patrick's Day. So last Thursday, Assistant Village Manager Maddie Zahaj and Superintendent of Water Facilities Andy Teese, the Town Supervisor and Budget Officer met with electric vehicle charging company. So we're keeping with the green theme here to revisit adding chargers at the community center as well as at our downtown, in our downtown and at our train station. Incentives are available through NYSERDA and Con Edison, and they will enable us to procure and install high-speed charging stations and receive nearly 100% reimbursement, which is good news. So we'll keep you posted on that, and you'll be seeing some charging stations popping up over the next, in the near future. On Tuesday, I took part in a NICOM webinar yesterday with guest Senator Chuck Schumer, who spoke about the $33 billion of COVID relief funds that have been allocated to New York State by the federal government. Of the $33 billion, 40% will go directly to municipalities. And the town of Ossining is slated to receive $4.1 million. So we're waiting more guidance as to how those funds will be distributed, be based on population for the most part, between or amongst the Village of Ossining, the Village of Briarcliff, and the unincorporated town. So some good news there. Last evening, Sustainable Westchester partnered with the Village of Ossining and the Village of Briarcliff and the town of Ossining for another webinar on the energy smart homes. Several dozen community members listened in to learn about options available through this program that enable homeowners and renters to make their homes more comfortable while lowering their carbon footprint. So we are looking, we have not, the next webinar has not been scheduled, but we're hoping to have Energy Smart Homes Program Director Lauren Boyce join us at a future meeting so she can provide an overview of the program and explain the various incentives that are available. Last week, Governor Cuomo announced that effective today, March 17th, that all public-facing government employees are eligible to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. And thanks to our partners at Westchester County, we were able to enroll many of our parks, highway, and sanitation staff for their first dose later this week at 2 municipal employees pop-up. So we look forward to continuing to partner with the county and the state to get more vaccines for people in Ossining, including all of our employees. Another sign that things are opening up, we will be able to run summer camp program, modified, of course, in compliance with COVID regulations, but we will be running pre-K camp, K through 5 camps. Our camp 6 to 8 that's usually done at Vets Park will not be able to do that, mostly for reasons of the pandemic. That's a traveling camp, but we will be offering weekly programs that you can sign up by week for 6th through 8th graders. So we look forward to sports activities, STEM activities, and other activities. We're happy to be able to accommodate this. We had a meeting with the school district today and other community partners to really put together an array of programming, or make sure that the community is aware of the vast array of programming that we're going to have for young people this summer. We're coordinating those efforts, so we'll be getting that information out. There's some fee-based programs, but there's also a lot of free programs that will be available for young people this summer. So we're happy about that. I'm happy to offer that to members of our community, and a lot of really great outdoor activities too. So tomorrow night at 7 p.m. we will be having our 6th and final presentation on the DPW site, our mixed-use, mixed-income development, proposed mixed-use development. And the title of this one is "If you lived here, you'd be home by now." So we'll be talking about the process of how the units will be marketed, the lottery system that will determine eligibility, and how people can prepare. This is not going to be for in the very, very near future, but if this goes through, people will have the opportunity, and we want to prepare them and let them know what's available at the site, and what it looks like, what the apartments will look like. So there's a lot of really good information for that. So join us. You can find the link on our website at 7 o'clock tomorrow night for that webinar. I'd also like to add, that is with great pleasure, that I have appointed Mark Cortesny as a full member to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Mark has been participating as an alternate, and he is now a full member. So thank you.
Thank you, Village Manager. I also thought, correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, that there was an announcement that it's also all client-facing or front-facing, I guess it's called, for the vaccines. It's also the non-for-profit employees also are now qualified.
Correct.
Is that true?
Correct.
Okay,
yes.
so
yes.
we have registered in the Village of Ossining over 230 nonprofits. They come in all shapes and sizes, but if you are an employee, you also qualify now. And I think that's a big deal because so many of our nonprofits, as we now have seen, really do a lot of services that are very customer facing. I know they don't call them customers, I have the wrong word, but people facing rather than in offices and headquarters and things like that, the way they might in the city of New York. So go out and get your vaccines, because now you can do that too if you're at one of our not-for-profits. Okay, and I'm excited about camps. It's you and I have spoken about it. I'm thrilled because last summer we were able to open it, but it was rough going. So hopefully this summer, still some challenges, but really, really looking forward to that. So I appreciate that. Corporation Counsel, Stuart Kahan.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, folks. A few things on our agenda tonight. We have a couple of resolutions relating to tax certioraries. One with regard to, which is a tax certiorari itself, which is an actual proceeding brought under Article 7 of the Real Property Tax Law, and the other, which are a series of small claim assessment review proceedings which relate to individual homes, and those are both being before the board tonight. There are other resolutions with regard to settlement of some matters and allowing the village manager to sign an agreement with a Nexus Creative relating to work to be undertaken at both the 16 Croton Avenue and the community center. I do want to thank Steve Dewey, who is the town prosecutor and also a member of our Landlord-Tenant Relations Council, for this next announcement, which is something that we have known of in the village. Unfortunately, COVID brings scams. And one of the most prominent scams that we are seeing, and we've seen it with at least 7 village employees, is unemployment applications get filed in the names of employees. What happens is they are fraudulent. There is a $180 bank card that gets issued. Once the scammer gets that card, they can essentially go in and change all the information in that person's bank account. Steve wrote earlier to the board and to me that he had been getting numerous phone calls about the same thing. And he contacted the Department of Labor, which acknowledged that they are simply overwhelmed by the scam. But we can provide you with some information. If you find that you are a victim of such a scam, which is dealing with unpaid wages or unemployment insurance or anything like that, you can contact the Department of Labor at 888-598-2077 or 866-435-1499. Alternatively, you can go to www.labor.ny.gov/agency-info/report-fraud, and you can file a fraud report. As I said, it's unfortunately it's a big deal. A lot of people are having it. In the case of one of our employees, he's actually a fully employed police officer, and so we knew immediately that it was a scam. It was also because it had the wrong address. Presumably the address on there is the address of the scam person who would get the check from the state. But the state had already flagged it. But a lot of these are out there. So just be aware of it. Again, my thanks to Steve Dewey, so that if people get it, they can follow up and make the appropriate complaints to the Department of Labor. Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry, folks, I forgot to unmute. Chief Sylvester.
Good evening. Two quick announcements. One, this week our department conducted compliance checks of all the retail establishments that sell alcoholic beverages within the village and town of Ossining. Three businesses failed that test. Highland Gas Mart, which is the BP at 185 North Highland Avenue, Palisades Fuel, the Sunoco station at 197 South High, and CVS located at 202 South Highland Avenue were all cited for selling an alcoholic beverage to a person under the age of 21. Additionally, the Department of Health from Westchester County issued citation to the Bell Station on, the Shell Station on Bell Avenue for display of flavored vapes, which is banned federally. We cite them, they go to court, and then it's in other people's hands. So people hear that we do this often. There rarely seems to be a long-term consequence to it, but we will continue to enforce the law to the best of our ability. My other announcement is that the sign up for the police test remains open until March 29th, 12 days left to sign up. Sign up is at westchestergov.com. Thanks.
Great, thank you. We hope that more people that we have tried as much as we can, the chief has, various folks on the board, staff, to get the information out about the police exam, because it's sometimes a little tricky to figure out when these tests are given, and they're not given often, and how and where and when. So we've really put it out there, and I hope everyone is sharing it. For those folks who are interested in a career in policing, this is the opportunity. And as the chief said, there is a time frame around it. So you gotta get in it while the window is open. So good luck on that. Next is organizational announcements. So this is for organizations that have any announcements about events that they might have coming up or anything they want the public to know. You get a couple of minutes. So I'm trying to see, we have a bunch of people on. Raise the little hand to let us know if you have an announcement. Jamie, I think you're on, right?
I'm here. Nobody has their hand raised.
Okay, I don't see your picture. I see your picture, I don't see you. Okay. The next thing that we have is public comment on agenda item. I'd like to take just a moment to explain this because I received a few emails. There is a process to meetings. We notice for the whole year, all our legislative meetings and all our work sessions. Work sessions are less formal. They're an opportunity for staff, for an organization that wants to get themselves on an agenda in front of the board to have a discussion, a meeting. Could be for grants, it could be informational, it could be, usually it's the staff wanting to let the board know things. In those meetings, we often then talk about what might go into either a policy or a legislation. We are a legislative body. We help with policy and with writing legislature and oversight. Usually the legislation comes to legislative meetings, which is what this is. This is a legislative meeting. I point out public comments on agenda items because this is not a town hall meeting. It is not a public meeting per se, in the sense that it is not a participatory public meeting, as some people interpret. It is open to the public to observe and watch from a point of view of transparency. I point this out to you because I see some folks on the attendee side. If you have any comments about anything on the agenda related to legislation, so that would be, let me read out so that we're all on the same page. There is a bunch of resolutions up here. I won't go through A and B and C. There are approvals for vouchers and things like that. There is a call for public hearing. That's letter C. All of this is on the website, and it was put up there, I believe, on Friday. Somebody will correct me if it wasn't, but that's usually when they're put up. There's resolution authorizing tax certioraries. There is authorization for small claims assessment. That's letter E. There is, and then there's a bunch of schedules. Sorry, I just have to bring my screen up a bit. Okay. Okay, so I want people to understand what we're doing here. This is the information part, the education part. F, authorizing the village manager to sign an agreement. Under continuing business, there's discussion of a draft plan for the police reform. We have gone through an entire process over the past few months. Last Wednesday, we had hoped, we had called a meeting, we had invited the working committee to join us as panelists. Why? So that if the board, in its process of looking at the plan now in March, had some questions that they wanted, we wouldn't have Jamie Hoffman bringing individuals back and forth on Zoom, but rather included them as panelists, asked questions, and we had questions. We had hoped to finish that whole piece of the board speaking with each other. The five of us do not get together except, generally speaking, at these work sessions. We could speak to each other individually all week, and believe you me, we do, and we have on almost every topic you're seeing tonight, especially this one. If you have comments that you would like to make, if you're not in the panelist section, if you're an attendee, this would be the time for the comments that we're coming up now. Once we get past this point, there is no more commentary on the plan. The board is now in the position of taking this plan, having a discussion, agreeing or disagreeing or commenting on different pieces. We have only about a handful left because we went after midnight on Wednesday, and I think it's fair to say we were all exhausted at that point and felt that it was time to conclude. So if you want to speak towards the plan, this is a time to ask to speak, and you get, I think, up to, I have to go back now, I can't remember if it's 3 or 4 minutes to speak about that. So I just want to make it clear how this works, because I did get some emails pretty
Madam
late
Mayor?
in the day. Yeah, please.
I just want to add that there is visitor recognition at the very end of the meeting.
Correct.
Where folks do have a 3-minute opportunity to address the board on issues that could be related to the agenda or not related to the agenda, but having to do with the common good of the village.
Right. Thank you. We will go into, I was simply going to explain that we had actually put, I wanted to see how many minutes. And then there's the visitor recognition just discussed, and that's how the process works. And we will be voting on the plan. Tonight is not a vote. Tonight is a conversation amongst the board members in a public fashion to be transparent, and that's how I run the meetings. We will be voting on the 24th. So I just wanted to frame the conversations and where we are with everything. Having done that, hopefully that makes it a little bit clearer. Having done that, I am going back to where we were on the agenda. Okay.
So if people want an opportunity to speak right now on any of the resolutions on the agenda, it's 4 minutes. They have one opportunity that's 4 minutes long.
Okay, great. And yes, and it's one opportunity. We don't keep going back and forth. Okay, so we are up to, we finished organization announcements. We're up to public comment on agenda items. Is there anyone that would like to speak? And Jamie Hoffman is going to be looking for hands. by hands on Zoom.
They can also, they should be able to comment as well in the comment screen.
Right, but I'm not seeing anything. Are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay. So having said that, we will be now moving to the next part, which is, okay, Village Board resolutions. Thank you.
Okay. Approval of minutes, March 3rd, 2021. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the minutes of the March 3rd, 2021 regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any
those in
comments on
favor?
the board? Give me a second, Martha. I have to unmute. Any comments on the board? Okay. Martha?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Approval of voucher detail, March 17th, 2021. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated March 17th, 2021 in the amount of $524,577.58. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Comments? Martha?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Call for a public hearing pursuant to Village of Ossining Code Section 270-59C. Consideration on application for 2 Sherman Place LLC to amend the zoning map for property located at 2 Sherman Place, Section Block and Lot 89.16-3-88.1 for the current S75 zoning district for the NC-2 zoning district. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining hereby calls for a public hearing to take place on April 7th, 2021 at 7:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard, to provide the public an opportunity for public comment pursuant to New York Village Law Section 7-706 and the Village Code Section 270-59C on the application by 2 Sherman Place LLC to amend the zoning map for property located at 2 Sherman Place, Section Block and Lot 89.16-3-88.1 from the current S-75 single-family zoning district to the NC-2 neighborhood Central Zoning District, and be it further resolved that as a result of the continuing state of emergency in the executive order issued by the governor, the public hearing will be conducted remotely via Zoom, and be it further resolved that pursuant to the Village of Ossining Code Section 270-59C, at least 15 days notice from the time and place of the public hearing should be published in the village's official newspaper, and be it further resolved that pursuant to the Village of Ossining Code Section 270-59C, the village clerk shall cause notice to be mailed at least 15 days before the hearing to all owners of properties which lie within 300 feet of the proposed map change, and be it further resolved that for those individuals who want to watch and or participate in the public hearing, the following contact information is provided. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Comments from the board?
I do, Mayor.
Please.
So Stuart or Martha, can we add the documents that are in particular for this particular application? Can we link them back into this and that can be included with the letter that came from the planning board as well, or the BAR?
Trustee Quezada, all those documents that's about 75 pages.
But that cannot be a link, because I mean there's some.
But when you say a link, do you mean a link in the agenda, or do you mean a link?
No,
because as compared, this is just the notice.
Okay, but the notice when we go into the public hearing,
right,
cannot be a link into those documents at that time.
Yes, because it was also a link when it was on the agenda last time. So
Okay.
It's been linked before.
No problem.
So
Yeah, if you can just, if we can please do that as well again for the public
that's fine.
notice.
Sure.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Resolution authorizing tax certiorari payment for Parkview Apartments Corporation, 117 through 121 South Highland Avenue. Whereas a tax certiorari proceeding was instituted against the assessor of the Town of Ossining, the Board of Review of the Town of Ossining, and the Town of Ossining by Parkview Apartments Corporation against petitioner's property situated at 117-121 South Highland Avenue in the Village of Ossining and designated as Section 97.11, Block 2, Lot 82, and 121 South Highland Avenue in the Village of Ossining and designated as Section 97.12, Block 1, Lot 7 for the 2020 assessment year under the index number 61494/2020 and resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining, upon certification by the village treasurer that all of the aforesaid taxes have been paid, hereby authorizes and directs the village treasurer to make the payment of such refund of real property taxes due to Parkview Apartments Corporation to Griffin, Cogan, Sulzer, and Horgan, P.C., as attorneys and agents for Parkview Apartment Corporation as required by said consent judgment, and be it further resolved that the village treasurer is authorized to make the aforesaid payment so the village may avoid the payment of any penalties, and be it further resolved that the village treasurer shall make a notation in the margin of the assessment rolls of the Village of Ossining that said assessments were reduced and payment of a refund of the overpayment of real property taxes was made pursuant to the judgment. Do I have a motion?
So move.
We need a second. Okay. Any comments on the board? Martha?
All those in favor?
Oh,
So,
Aye.
what
sorry,
happened?
sorry. Dale, I have a question for you on this one. So we usually, I don't recall, I mean, I know we get situations like this, but I don't recall that many properties at once. And are we still within a sort of budget number that we usually tend to have this the prior year, I guess?
Good evening. Yes, Manuel. Actually, when I was going through and doing the memo to relay the process and did the graphs for 10 years prior for the tax certs and then 11 years prior for the SCARs, the 2020 year ended up being higher than budgeted, unfortunately, which will be part of our housekeeping cleanup budget adjustments that I will come to the board with in April, because essentially we had budgeted $70,000 in our expenditure account, which covers all the prior year tax cert years on these judgments. The current year comes out of our actual tax revenue account. So it's a wash within the current year, so to speak. So essentially for the 2020 year, which were even the two certiorari's that the board had approved back in February, it goes by when the judge actually signed the certiorari judgment. So since it was signed in December, those two certs actually went back to our 2020 expenditure account and are essentially in accounts payable at year end. So this certiorari that is going before you tonight for the 11,663.01 will be our first certiorari for the 2021 year, and actually will be applied against our 2021 tax revenue. So it will not be going against our expenditure budget, which we actually increased because as we spoke about it during the budget process for 2021, where we had budgeted $70,000 for the two prior years for 2020 and 2019. When I looked at Fernando's master list of tax certiorari's, we take the 4-year prior because of the backlog in the court system. I then expound those out with a reduction rate based on a discussion with Fernando, how he feels, these potentially might settle out. And that's how I tried to determine a budget number for the coming year. So during the budget process for 2021, I essentially came up with a dollar figure of almost 68,000 potential certiorari payments that would be due from our operating expenditure line to pay for these tax certiorari claims. I did put in a little extra because things sometimes do settle earlier rather than later, and essentially then throw off, a given number. So we budgeted 97,000 in the 2021 budget for tax certiorari refunds. So for 2021, at this point, we are covered because this 11,000 is actually coming off of our tax revenue line because of the timing of it. But we were over at year end, unfortunately, for 2020 by $79,053.60, which I will be bringing a list of cleanup items, unfortunately, to the board in April, but we will still be showing a positive increase to our fund balance, which we will get into in April as well.
Thanks, Dale. Looking forward to that conversation. And my recollection on situations like this was, I can't remember what year. I want to say maybe after the Voucher, when Tom was with us, we actually had a higher number on this, and we were hoping to reduce it because after the rebound. But now
Right.
it seems like it, and I'm hoping I'm wrong, and I really hope I'm wrong, but I'm hoping we do not exceed what we had budget this year, and we actually reduce that, because that was the whole idea of having the reassessment of our properties to get done pretty much like Fernando says, 100%. And
Right.
to me, every time I see something like this, even though they're prior years, it kind of does start making no sense at some point of level. Sure, it's like, I thought we were 100%, but yet we got all this, when you look at the numbers, sometimes it's $100, $300, $500, but when you add those numbers up, it's add up to $11,000, $15,000, and when you go to prior years, so to me, it's like we have to, we can have enough conversation about this, an offline conversation about this, but it seems like we're not aligning. Something's missing in here, and I think that again, that will be an assessor's office factor that we need to have a deeper conversation, a deeper understanding what that looks like. So, but I'll leave it like that. Thank you, Dan.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask, did we vote? Is this a, okay,
All those in favor?
aye,
Aye.
Aye.
great.
Opposed?
Sorry,
Um,
on E, Corporation Counsel, does she have to read all of these things on here?
me and Stuart already went
No,
over what I
Mark and
have to
I-
read.
Mark
Oh, you
and I
already went
actually
over?
Go over
Okay.
exactly what has to
All
be
good.
read.
Thank you.
We're all good.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Authorization of small claim assessment review payments for 2020 assessment year, whereas certain small claim assessments review SCAR proceedings were commenced in the Supreme Court of the State of New York, County of Westchester, against the Town of Ossining by the following property owners for the 2020 assessment year. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining, upon certification by the village treasurer that all of the aforesaid taxes have been paid, hereby authorizes and directs the village treasurer to make such refund of real property taxes to the petitioners listed above. And be it further resolved that the village treasurer is authorized to make the aforesaid payment so that the village may avoid the payment of any penalties. And be it further resolved that a notion shall be made in the margin of the assessment roll that the said assessments were reduced and the payment of refunds for the overpayment of real property taxes were made pursuant to the stipulations. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Comments on the board? Martha?
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Just give me 1 second, my computer just froze. Okay, authorizing the village manager to sign an agreement with Nexus Creative. Resolved that upon review by the corporation council, the village manager is authorized to sign an agreement with Nexus Creative, 100 White Plains Road, Carytown, New York, for architectural services in connection with interior improvements and alterations at village-owned properties, including the municipal building, 16 Curran Avenue, and the Joseph J. Caputo Community Center, 95 Broadway. And be it further resolved that the terms of the agreement shall be set forth in the revised March 15, 2021 proposal letter. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So move.
Second.
Comments on the board? And I think we discussed this at length during the work session, but if there are any additional
Yeah,
comments?
I just have a quick question. Stuart, do you receive everything that you needed?
Yes, John Fry is getting me just a few answers back on the insurance, but with regard to the basic contract, yes.
Okay.
We have it.
Thank you, Stuart. That's all. Thank you.
So I do have something on this, and we went back and forth today on this, to the scope of work that was agreed to when we talked in a work session. In my recollection, it was the elevator and only the elevator in the municipal building and the community center. So I received your updated email, Stuart, I believe that was from you, with what was updated as a scope, and there's still something
Right.
in there in the the Croton Avenue building about security or whatever at the front of the building. So I'm just trying to figure out where this came from. If that's not what we agreed to.
Karen, before you answer that question on Stuart, Bob, you and I had a conversation early today. I thought I, explained everything that.
No, you didn't say anything about security. We talked about walls and maybe
we're talking
moving
about
section
walls
8,
and we
and that
talked
was
about
it.
And unfortunately, we got caught off. I got caught off because I had to go and I totally missed that portion of that. But part of the conversation was, we are looking into relocating the Section 8 office if that's what could be doable, removing that and putting that on the community center. We talked about that. Was that clear?
That was clear, yeah.
Okay, good. So the other part that we talked about last week was in regards to, I started saying when the pandemic was the portion of the heel of this and how the clerk's office became the hub of the Cronin Avenue, the whole Village Hall itself, and how, the concerns were of people going through the building itself. I thought in a way that was in a way clear that it was a security issue and how people were going up and forward without any point of access. So if it wasn't that clear, I'm sorry that wasn't clear. So I'm okay with this. Again, this is since that we are looking at the first floor and how the first floor works around and how functions, how that space could function better on the ground floor levels as a security point. I'm okay with, Nexus looking into this. Again, the main focus of this project on Village Hall, it will be the elevator to be replaced. Anything else in addition to that will be just a very schematic preliminary portion. Not only that, but just, and that, again, I don't want to debate more than what we did last week, but, and Kevin can chime in on this point, but I think Kevin was 2019, maybe, when Lieutenant Slater and Montague did, I can't recall, they did a training, shooters training, I believe. Help me with that one. There was
Active shooter.
An active shooter training in Village Hall, and not just in Village Hall, but throughout all our buildings, because there was some security issues at that time, and not in Ossining, obviously, but in other parts of the country. And they have some of the suggestions. I'm not bringing this up saying anything else, but there were some security issues at that time that I think we could address it now with minor modifications, if anything. Again, not major stuff. And again, so I'm in favor of moving this forward. I'm not sure if the rest of my colleagues had any additional questions, but I'm okay with this.
So you're in favor of moving it forward and including it in the scope that we didn't agree to last week?
That's not true, Bob. That's not true.
Okay, gentlemen, can I just chime in here? I want to step back, put a little perspective on this. When we did the budgets, Bob, there were budget conversations about a number of buildings that needed some upgrading. The second part of the budget discussion, there were 3 parts. That was first. The second one was, listen, folks, it's going to be a bad fiscal year, okay? It's going to be a bad year. If it doesn't catch up with us in the first quarter, it's going to catch up with us in the second quarter because every member of our community has been hurt. We will only look at projects even when and that's not a scoping project here, it's an architectural design. We want to be very mindful of looking at things incrementally. And by the way, also want to get some drawings from architects and whatever we need, where maybe the village staff can do the work and not hire outsiders to do the work. The third part of it was, what are the must-haves? What are the nice-to-haves? This Nexus Creative that we are voting tonight on is not about the scope that anybody's going to work on. It is it is drawings for the staff of getting the most for the bang of the money that we agree to pay. It might include a couple of more things that we may not do right now, but we'll have the drawings. We will be able to then use them both for staff to maybe do some of the work themselves if they're able to, or to go and hire others. Nothing, not a brick, is going to be moved, from my understanding, without the board's approval. This is architectural services. This is not the scope to do any work. There will be conversations of, in my opinion, trade-offs. Do you do A or do you do B? Do you do this building? Do you do that building? The security around the community center and the community center at large, there was a huge agreement that things have to happen there. But again, with the fiscal scenario that we might be looking at, I'm not saying what Dale just described is a problematic area. That's a budgetary issue that we will discuss. I'm not reopening that conversation now. So it seems to me, Bob, that if you look at this as architectural services, they took out some of the things that I think you had meant, said, I don't really want this looked down. I don't want to spend the money on it. But they have a bucket that we all agreed to. We also, in the budget process, had long conversation about different buildings and what they need for a slew of reasons, from security to efficiency to, you know, there's a leak here, there's something there. So it's architectural services that she's going to sign on, not to actually then move and do the work. The move and do the work is going to be done as a next step. So for me, I'm okay, because if they're able to do one or two more things in the same budget that we all already discussed in the fall, I feel like, why not? Why go hire somebody else again in 3 or 4 months? So I don't see a downside to doing this, because they're not starting the work without permission from the board, because that's not what this is. This is simply to sign the contract to do the drawings, not the work itself. And that's how I read it. And so I'm in support of this. And I heard the discussion last week of a couple of things that some folks were uncomfortable with, and they were taken out.
Thank you, Mayor.
Does anybody else have questions, comments? Because some of these we go back and forth from week to week. Everybody okay? Okay, are we in the middle of a vote, Martha?
Yes. Are we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, going on to continuing business of the board, discussion of draft plan for the police reform and reinvention collaborative.
Right, we are going to, thank you, Martha. This is really the Board of Trustees. I don't think the staff has as much to do with it. We have panelists who are from the working committee, just to frame the conversation. Wish we would have finished last week. Appreciate everyone's time well past midnight of really answering questions, delving into details. I think we have a handful left. What we did last week that I think worked for the trustees is that Trustee Lopez, who is the longest standing, and I thank him, longest standing member of the working committee, as well as the rest of the committee, many of whom are here. This is not a mandatory meeting for anybody, by the way. We simply invited people to participate so that if we have questions, he's going to read the handful that are remaining out of the recommendations. There will be board discussion. I suspect that 1 or 2 of the items, based on individual conversation I've had with the trustees as late as a couple of hours before this meeting started, this is all emotional items. These are the things that are left over, and we will, really the desired outcome is to complete this tonight so that we can vote on it next week, and then I'll sign the certification and send it up to state. So, Trustee Lopez, any comments before we get moving on this?
No, Madam Mayor. The only thing that I would add is I'm going to go in order of the sections in the report, and I'll be listing those out. They'll be in order, and it just happens to be that the order also is such that the first 2 that I'm going to name are ones that we did discuss last week, but we decided to table. So we'll get to those 2, and then the rest will be new ones that we haven't gotten to. Okay. So the first one in section A, and all of these are from the March 7th version of the police reform plan. Okay. Section A, governance, oversight, and transparency. Let's discuss the recommendation that says remove a rule that bars the CPCRB from reviewing complaint cases where either the OPD employee or complainant is the subject of an ongoing criminal investigation.
Sorry, folks, I forgot to unmute. Any commentary on this? Accept, decline, make changes, please.
So Stuart sent us an email about this one specifically. Stuart, if you can shed some light as to your take on this recommendation.
Thank you, Trustee Lopez. I just wanted to point out there is currently a provision in the code, and I'm just turning to the section. It's section 811, which talks about review of complaints, and it provides, number one, exceptions. The CPCRB shall review all written complaints except A, it shall not review cases during an ongoing criminal investigation against a police officer or complainant. B, it shall not review cases while criminal charges are pending. C, when a filed civil action is pending. Number two, however, some cases in subsections A1, A, B, and C above may be reviewed by the CPCRB if the chief has commenced an internal departmental investigation and/or review has been deemed appropriate by the village attorney. So the particular recommendation which the board had put to the side until tonight is dealt with within the code. It would be an exception to the general rule that those complaints would not be reviewed while there is either an ongoing criminal investigation, criminal charges pending, or a civil action pending. But there is an ability under the code as currently exists to allow in particular circumstances for those complaints to be reviewed.
So that I'm clear, again, this is the point of the meeting here. You believe that it is unnecessary to add this to a plan because it exists already. Is that what I'm understanding here, Stuart?
You are, Mayor. That is correct. It's already in the code.
Okay. So do we have a majority support? This is not vote, we're going to vote for the plan, but we do want to complete this plan. Matrix is going to take the information from tonight. They are, yes. Richard and Ian, thank you for being here tonight. They will take the information and they will update a plan so that we have a completed final plan.
Can you tell us what I don't have it up in front of me, what all our answers were to that, Omar?
All right, because we've got one sheet.
Yep. So, Bob, you said you needed a clarification. Rika and Dana wanted to know if it was allowed under the PBA contract, and I wanted somebody to explain it to me, which I now have had.
Okay, so we are going to, because one of the things we've been doing is we're not putting something in the plan that is already in our code. Is that correct? That's what we've been doing. So I think we can now move forward to the next one unless somebody objects.
Sorry, Mayor. Actually, Jennifer has his hand raised.
Where?
Jennifer Cabrera. She's a part of the panelists.
No, I know she is. I
Okay.
didn't see the hand. Sorry, Jennifer. I did not see your hand up there. Okay. Please, Jennifer.
Oh, no worries. So I did just want to raise one issue that we found in the CPCRB when we had a complaint like this, which was why I was the one who came up with that particular recommendation in that committee. So in the case that came up before us, there was a complaint about something that happened during an arrest.
Mm-hmm.
So we couldn't review the complaint because it was going through the court process. Sorry, I'm trying to lower my hand also. It was going through the court process. By the time that court process finished up, the records were sealed. So then we still couldn't review the complaint, even though the criminal proceeding had finished, because the records were sealed and we were no longer able to view them. So that type of restriction means that we can never review that complaint. And our hands are just tied. So that's really, I think, what we're trying to achieve with making this change, so that we can review the complaints when they come in. We may not, you all are the ones who eventually make a disciplinary decision around what happens. You can make that timing after the criminal case has ended. But I think that is something important to consider before making a decision here.
And I believe, and you're going to correct me if I'm wrong, that, and just, it's not the same public that watches from week to week. I hate to be redundant, but Jennifer Cabrera, thank you for being here along with everybody else. You're also the chair of the current CPRB. So I just wanted to,
Yes.
to let people know, which has been super helpful. If I remember correctly, it was because of a backlog that had existed is one of the reasons that had actually occurred.
Correct.
Okay, so, okay, it's just that there isn't a backlog now. Lots of the stuff that you went through, because you've been a very active committee. I would not say that in the past couple of years or so it's been as active. And there was a backlog that I think that's for me, I think that's an aberration, and that we can override it now, understanding what is happening here. So I'm sorry, I'm switching. I'm looking at myself. Sorry about that. I'm looking at two different screens. Sorry, I keep moving my head. I think this is much better. So I think that for me, I'm okay with what I had just stated. And
so, well, I do want to flag that, you know, this was a complaint that we knew about, I think before the criminal proceedings had ended. I'm not entirely sure about that part.
Okay.
But it is something that we probably would have just waited for the criminal proceedings to end before we had, you know, even asked for permission to review the complaint. And I think that's the part that makes me really uncomfortable about this. If something happens and, you know, it doesn't really lay out the process by which the Corporation Counsel would grant an exception and proceed with the review, I would assume that we would probably need to ask for that to happen.
Right.
Or maybe he would proactively, you know, look at the complaint and say, hey, this is one that you all should be able to review. You know, things were a little bit crazy when we got to this particular one. But I do worry that something else like that might happen, where the CPCRB is waiting for the court process to finish, and then upon completion, they're not able to review because the records have been sealed.
Right. I'm less worried now, to be perfectly honest about it, because one of the things we've already agreed on based on the recommendation is to assign an attorney. You asked for an attorney a while back. It will be part of the process to have an attorney. Therefore, you will have, like some of our other boards, continuity of an attorney, learning curve of an attorney, and you already have that. I mean, even before this governor's order, you guys were already on this path. So you will have a much more proactive attorney to be doing this. So I'm less worried of what happens now, or even in the past 2 to 3 months, than when you and I started this journey and were on phone calls, because things were very, very, very much up in the air. But they're not anymore. And so codes and policies, so I'm much more comfortable with a whole bunch of things that are happening already, based on not only this initiative, but the fact that you all have already stepped up, and Stuart Kahan has been involved on a regular and ongoing and proactive basis. I mean, that's sort of where and I don't want this to be just me talking, but I'm speaking for myself. So I am much more comfortable with where we are now. I don't know if anybody wants to change their points of view, their minds or whatever, but that's sort of where I'm falling on this. Anybody else? I hear you, and we've had, and it's a conversation that we've been having. So this is still sort of my sense of things.
I will agree with that statement, Mayor. I'd be comfortable with just leaving it out, just because we already have that into our plan already.
Anybody else? And Omar, I can't tell if you're saying I'm ready to go to the next thing. I can't tell if you're saying I have something, because you're shaking your head. So I'm trying to.
Yeah, no, I agree.
To read the gallery here. Okay, so next.
I agree.
Dana?
Oh, I'm sorry, Dana.
I'm for anything that gives the Civilian Review Board what they need to do what they do. So as long as, if a case like this comes up, so long as it can be considered you know, I just want to make sure that every case is considered possibly for them to review. You know, I don't know if we need to spell it out explicitly, but I do want to make sure that nothing slips through the cracks and that they do have what they need and can get the hearing that they want. So however that can happen, you know, I mean, I agree, assuming that can happen.
So Stuart's been in all of the CPRB, I shouldn't say all. Stuart, you've been in all the CPRB meetings, right?
Over the
Since
past
Chairman
over the
Cabrera
past-
has been on?
No, I don't. I think just shortly after Chair Cabrera, but over the past couple of months, definitely.
Okay, and so I need to seek your guidance here. You made it clear this is your point for clarification, so I'm moving forward unless you tell me that they are not per Trustee White's request that they, I mean, it'll be up to you, the attorney sitting
Correct.
there. Okay,
You are correct.
all right, and you're the one that clarified it. Omar?
So that I understand, the recommendation is to decline this recommendation?
That's what it sounds like, because it already exists. And the reason would be, so Matrix gets this because I'm not sure in what I had read last night, albeit it was late last night. And Omar, you and I spoke at a point, I reread 67 pages. I'm not sure that from last Wednesday meeting, Matrix captured the appropriate declinations, and because it's like a double negative, right? So I just want to make sure, to your point, Omar, that is what's happening, and that needs to be said. And it needs to be said, Richard, because based on counsel advice and recommendation, it already exists in our code.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, next. Under section B, policies and procedures, the village needs to evaluate the role of police officers in the schools and whether a presence is desired at all.
Okay. So what are the comments on the side? I'm probably going to change my commentary a little bit, but not the spirit of my commentary from last time. I just want you to repeat.
We were kind of in a few different directions, with the main proposals being Trustee Fritchie's, let's have a representative from the BOT, a representative from the Board of Education, and a representative from the police department meet once a year to have a conversation about the presence of officers in the schools, and then report back to the board what the result of that conversation is. Your recommendation, Mayor Levin, was to have annual conversation with the Board of Education and the Board of Trustees. My recommendation was to have the chief give an update as part of the overall update in terms of this item specifically.
Okay, so I've been starting these because normally I go last as the mayor, but this is sort of an area that I just feel, let me kick the tires a little bit and give everybody space to then react. I'm good with all of them. I'm good. I'm accepting the recommendation as is. I will accept the recommendation for me with any of those, because they all essentially say the same thing. It says that there has to be a review, and that it's the tactical who does it when they do it actually wasn't the request by the committee. The way the committee requested is that it get done, that there would be an evaluation of and the need for police officers in the school. I simply said that I think the Board of Education needs to be more highly involved than they are today, because it's their campuses. And they're the ones that have to answer to the public as well. They're also elected officials. So I'm accepting all of them, the way it was written in the plan, the way Trustee Lopez wants it written, the way Trustee Fritchie wants it written, because my entire purpose here is that it needs to be reviewed. There has to be once a year. It seems to be ongoing, I think, but I'm good with all of them. So I'm good as is, or with anybody else's point.
So I think the difference, Mayor Levin, is that the three of us have made a regular conversation, like an annual evaluation
Right.
of presence, whereas, and this is where I'd like Jennifer and Gabby and Richard, if he's around as well, to just give some color, as you say, to the spirit of the recommendation, whether the spirit, because it reads to me as a one-time evaluation. So evaluate the role of police officers. Once it's evaluated, it's done, as opposed to what we're talking about is a annual re-evaluation. So members of the committee, do you have any added context to add here?
Thanks, Elmar. Yeah, I would just say that he's right. We were thinking of it more in terms of whether or not we need police officers in the school period. If we decided to then have it, then maybe we'd have an ongoing discussion. But to do a full assessment of that, whether or not that's actually necessary, whether or not that actually achieves the goal.
Yeah, Ro has his hand raised, and I think he's the one who actually wrote it down. But yeah, that's essentially what we had recommended. I think a fuller evaluation perhaps than what might happen during an annual conversation. But I'll let Ro clarify a little bit more.
Yeah, I think you're both correct, and I think that's what we set out to do. I think maybe going a little bit further, also just if situations may arise, if students may have concerns, if there's some discomfort felt by a parent or a student of anything like that, or some situation may occur. Also, leaving space to analyze the relationship at that point as well, and not have to wait for a 1-year conversation to do that. Also, I think would be meaningful.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Looking at my screen. So recommendation. Oh, I'm sorry, Dana. There you are.
All right. I think that especially older kids, middle school and high school, should be listened to in terms of how they feel. I wasn't in on the discussions that were had with the high school kids, but small kids may be into having the policemen in at school and stuff. Once you get to middle school and high school, your attitudes may change. And I think it's really important that parents and students are heard on this. And I certainly agree with a big evaluation and a discussion. I haven't seen, I haven't personally witnessed, what happens in the schools between the police officers and the students and what they do and all that. So it's hard for me without that firsthand knowledge. But I just want to make sure that that the students and the parents are heard and the police are heard, and that the reasons why they're there are fully understood, and that you move from there. But I agree with a large evaluation. Maybe it's a one-time thing, and then maybe it's annually revisited, or it's revisited as circumstances dictate. But that's just my feeling.
Sorry if I can interject also. Thank you, Trustee White. And the reason we included that one is just from the students we spoke to, which I wouldn't consider it, unfortunately, a sample population, just because it was two handful of students compared to the size of the school district. They did speak to having discomfort with having the SROs on campus, etc. And from that, and from what a lot of other school districts nationwide, and just a lot of the research that we read and everything, that's why we recommended that. However, and so I think it does, it does leave space for, really, since this is something that rests on the BOE's shoulders, that they really, kind of, the way we're saying that we're following a Westchester County recommendation, like, let's say on indemnity, also say, like, kind of, the school board should conduct in this, where they do a kind of a village-wide survey to see what people really feel, and not just kind of deciding to do things on their own, but actually, also including the public and the students and the parents and the families in it as well. I think will be very beneficial.
Okay, so anybody else? Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Jennifer. Omar, it seems to me that there is suggestion, agreement, etc., that this does get evaluated annually by the BOE and by the BOT. I'm looking for all the acronyms. They make me all crazy. And that annual sounds about right with the chief of that. It's the chief of police is the key lever here of the conversation as well, because it involves the police. So if we can write that up, does that make sense, Omar? The way
I think that it's a
up?
little bit different than that, Madam
Okay.
Chair. I think that it's closer to what Trustee White described. And here's now that I've heard some additional perspectives, how
Right.
I feel about it. So after having spoken with the chief, knowing the close relationship that the chief has with Superintendent Sanchez, I feel a lot of confidence about the regular communication happening between our two bodies. And I feel like I'm basically neutral about an annual review. I just don't know how much value one would derive from something like that. I can't even imagine what potential outcomes there may be, but I'm not opposed to it. I just don't necessarily see a lot of value. Where I would see more value is in what Trustee White mentioned, which is closer to what the other members mentioned. And the reason is because I, as a member of the community, don't have a clear sense of what the history of a lot of this is and what the current purposes are, because there are a few, right? There's the school shooting aspect of all of this. There's the crime prevention aspect and public safety aspect of all of this. There's the element of having a member of our community, a police officer, demystified by having relationships with students and having really close personal relationships with students, such that at the very least, students will graduate from our schools knowing a police officer and saying the police officers are here to help and having a positive perspective of them. And at most, maybe seeing themselves as one of those people. So there's a few reasons why the officers may be in the schools at this point. And I think it would be helpful to get to do a one-time evaluation of here are all the reasons why they are there. And then now let's also take a look at what some of the potential trade-offs may be. There's the issue of the school to prison pipeline and all of that. What are the ways in which the way that we do it may perpetuate some of those things or not? I have no idea. I don't have any data to base that off of. And then you could also add some public sentiment elements of it as well, as Ro was talking about. That's a big effort. That's not a little project. It's a big project. And so I'm not opposed to it. I just also am cognizant of the many other priorities that we have as a village. So whether it is something that we do in 2021 or in the next 3 years, maybe it's something that we budget out in terms of staff time for next year or whenever. I do think that there would be value in working with the Board of Education and the Chief of Police in order to get those kind of clear answers. And so that's how I would feel. So my recommendation would be to leave the recommendation as is, with the heart of it being a one-time large evaluation and then an annual review, maybe as an outpouring of that, or I'm neutral about adding that language to this as well.
Okay, so I am fine with accepting as is and adding that. I'm sorry.
There's a hand up in the attendees.
Yeah, but the attendees are not part of the conversation.
Okay. Right.
As I mentioned earlier, in case you came on later, this is a legislative session. This is new business. There was an opportunity to discuss any of the agenda items, of which this is one earlier in the meeting. There will be an opportunity at the end. This is not a public meeting per se. This is a legislative session where the trustees are discussing a specific item and have brought on the working committee to help answer our questions, advice, and do what they just did, oftentimes it isn't the letter that is written, but the spirit in which they intended it, the recommendation to be that, frankly, for most of us, that's the most important part, is the intentions, so that we get it right. And I said that last Wednesday many, many times. I will not do that again. That probably delayed us by 20 minutes for me repeating that statement over and over again. I will not do that again. But for new attendees, the time to have spoken was earlier. There will be a time at the end. At the end of the meeting, if you look at the agenda on the website, there is an opportunity at the end to give your commentary, but we will not be having back and forths and Q&A. That is all those comments have been accepted at this point. So I appreciate, though, Dana, let's keep looking, because I'm sort of not seeing everybody's hands when they go up. So Omar, I think we have accepted as is and adding that at some point there has to be one review, because as the chief has said, much of the conversations happens with him and the superintendent based on the request by the school system, not the police department or the village, but it's actually the school that is requesting police officers on their campus. And everything that Omar just said and Dana said and I said in the beginning. So that's where we are now. Does that make sense? As is, with some annual review, so that we know, I guess, a benchmark or something that can drive us forward, and we will learn then. And I'm sure the members of Board of Education will be hearing this as well from us. Okay, and the next item.
Trustee White, did you have something to add?
Who?
Oh, it was just noticing the person who was raising their hand. That was it?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thanks. The next recommendation, Section B, Policies and Procedures. The department should modify its general orders to include OPD officers will not respond with ICE unless they are called to the location. The policy should be adopted to reduce the appearance that OPD is working with ICE. The new general order would not prohibit OPD from responding.
Okay, I'm going to kick this off as well, staying where we were before. So from my conversation with trustees, my conversations for the past couple months, this is one of the more emotional items, I think it is fair to say, of the recommendation. There are a few others, but this is one of the more emotional. It is my understanding that this board is split on this. It's my understanding it has been, actually. So I do want to get the board, I want to be respectful of people's emotions and where we stand on all of this. And I want to remind folks that I chair this committee. So please address comments to me and not go back and forth in the gallery here. Okay. So I'm going to kick this off, and because I've been doing it, and I'm just gonna, somebody said to me, when the mayor, you're supposed to be taking the daggers, so it's okay with me. I actually, 2 to 3 months ago, would have not agreed with this statement. It is my sincere belief that the police chief in Ossining, Chief Sylvester, is 100% right in saying that sending police officers when ICE have arrested members of this community, I would say all of them are part of the immigrant population, is benefited from police officers observing. They do not escort ICE. They observe ICE to protect everyone in the community from the activities that ICE had. And most of it was overly aggressive, overreaching, and a whole bunch of other words I don't want to use. That was the reality for 4 years. Under a new administration, this is a federal agency. ICE is a federal agency. It reports on the federal level. The local police have absolutely no jurisdiction over ICE. They have no ability to stop them from arresting someone, but they do have an ability to protect members of the community. And they have the opportunity to, by simply being there, to observe what's going on and sort of let ICE know that they're being watched. I mean, that's my understanding in simple terms. I've been hearing that conversation for probably 4 years now. The change for me occurred with the election of a new president, with an election of Biden, who has made it very clear that he is reining in ICE, both in spirit and in writing, of their behavior, who they arrest, when they arrest, and how they conduct themselves when their boss says, you are not to do it. I mean, I'm speaking here in simple, plain terms. That changed the equation for me because I believe that the tenor and the spirit of how ICE behaves does not require us to escort them, excuse me, my apologies, to observe them. So that's one change for me. The second piece for me is that I've been told that this is a best practice. It probably is, but I actually have no proof that it's best practice. And for me, that actually matters. What I also don't have is any other chief that I've seen or any other community that has said, yeah, this is what we should do for our community. It is my belief that most communities and most police officers in villages and towns are very respectful of their community. Those that have larger immigrant population have the same issues that we do. But I haven't seen that come to fruition. And lastly, it seems that we have been doing something that I happen to agree with in principle. My issue is that somehow, no matter how much we talk about in social media and how many times it's been discussed in meetings, that there's so much disinformation, which, by the way, is very different than misinformation, because misinformation is misunderstanding. Disinformation is people putting stuff all over social media that is simply inaccurate, either purposefully, intentionally, or innocently about this topic. So that just gets me angry and it doesn't help anybody. The problem is that with all that, the immigrant population that is most affected by this have spoken, and I have gone through great pain to speak to some of the cultural organizations, individuals, that they don't actually understand. To them, it looks like one police force. They can't differentiate one from the other. And this is not about optics and it's not about politics, because I have already, believe me, the ship has sailed where it matters to me so much about the optics. What matters to me is that people who are most affected by it are negatively affected. We should be educating people first and then carrying out policy, not carry out policy first and then educating people. That's just the wrong flow of advice, because the misunderstandings over and over again is that we're escorting ICE and that we're participating. It does no good for our community. It puts people in hiding. It angers people. So good intentions, I totally get. Execution of it has not been great because there has been such a lack of education and information. However, we've tried to reach this community, it has not succeeded. It has come out of both this group, and let's be very clear, this is not the only committee that has been involved in this. We have been talking to lots of different folks in lots of different ways to get information about this topic. And from my point of view, I am, at this point, going to change where I was 2 months ago. I am in favor of the recommendation that, as a matter of policy, that the police not escort ICE, and that in fact we need to increase the education to our community of the difference between the federal agencies. And by the way, federal agencies include narcotics, human trafficking, and all that. And no one in this gallery would object if the police, the local police, worked on those issues. So I want to be very clear that this is a really, really tough decision to make. It's one, as all the trustees on this call know, that has kept me up at night for quite a few nights because I've been calling them. So where I come down on this, and this is going to be a majority support, decline, etc., as we do with everything else, I am in favor of the recommendation of this committee to not have the police escort, seem like they're escorting by being on site. I am in favor of education and encouraging the community to call the police if problems arise, to come and help community members, either the ones in the community or the immigrant community that needs their help. I'm sorry for the long verbiage. I want to be very clear that a lot of thought has gone into this. And I want to be very clear that no matter where you are on this, this was a very, very tough decision. Based on everything I just said, I'm going to open this up to whoever wants to go next, because we will need to come to some closure here, folks.
I can go next. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I will be as brief or as concise as I can be. this is the kind of issue that from a values perspective, I'm a progressive person and my values are such that anything that I can do to support the immigrant community, which has suffered in many ways, not least of which because of ICE, I would be in favor of. I think that would be tremendous. And I'm also a really practical person. And so beyond being able to go to my friends and family and say, look what I did to ICE, and they give me a pat on the back and say, amen. At the end of the day, there are actual people's lives that are affected by the decisions that we make. I say that with all due respect, of course, Madam Mayor. No comment toward you. So as I've learned about the details of what happens if we continue the policy that we have now versus what happens if we change the policy to follow the recommendations, I looked at the benefits and drawbacks, and I came out feeling like the benefits of keeping our current policy, where the police is able to support the community in this often traumatic situation, usually with really practical kinds of steps like communicating with the schools, helping people to ensure that their personal belongings, like their cars and so forth, are not left in random places. There's a lot of these kinds of details that would be missed if we changed the policy. And to me, that is a real service that the police do. The recommendation that we have already approved to educate the public with respect to the relationship between OPD and ICE, to me, gets to exactly the heart of what Mayor Levin described. And at the end of the day, I want to do what's, I'm a practical person. I want to do what's going to be actually best in people's lives in terms of the people who are going to be affected by the decisions that we make. And for that reason, I will decline the recommendation by the committee.
I agree with Omar, and education is key, but I agree with the services that are definitely offered with it, so I will decline.
Okay, thank you, trustees Fritchie and Lopez. Any other trustee with commentary? Not everybody's obligated to talk. I want to set that rule in place in case people didn't get it. Anyone else?
I can go next, Mayor.
Please.
We've been dealing with this issue of observing and scoring OPD to ICE for the misperception for years. I think it's close to, well, now it's actually close to 4 years, 3 and something change. And we actually passed a legislation a couple years back in regards to this and clarifying what the intent was from our police department to, like it was said by Trustee Lopez, in helping our community. And I think we have accomplished that. And I can not disagree with what was said. And I think it's not just with this topic, but with any topic that has to do with government and how government works is education, and how do we inform our community of things that happen around us and the stuff that we work on. From building department to DPW to surveys of our seals and new seal of that to me is the essential key of communication. For the past couple of weeks, and even early today, I had different conversations with different people, not just on Ossining, but throughout Westchester County within itself. And what does that look like? And what is the perception? Is obviously a perception of reality, sure. And the perception of a lot of communities is that, again, I have to go back and say, we're not scoring ICE. That's not what we do. That's not what our police department does. The perception from other members around Westchester is that that's what we're doing. How do we change that? We change that talking to members in our community. We change that different organizations that work with that part of our community, with the immigrant community itself. And I think, again, I think we have accomplished, I think OPD has accomplished the goal that we set a couple of years back. That being said, I'm going to agree with the mayor. I think for us, it's time to pull back. And, you know, if the community of the families are in need, you know, they can definitely reach out to OPD and ask for help. It doesn't have to be the family. It could be the neighbors, if for some reason that's the case. So I'm going to be in favor of keeping the recommendation that this committee have done. I think we haven't done the work that we were supposed to do 3.5 years ago. We have accomplished that goal. Now our goal as government is to educate our community to what the steps are that they need to take in situations like this, and have them understand that, again, our police department is here to help them. So I don't want to keep going. So I'm in favor of keeping this recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Casada. Dana White, if you
Does that
have
make me the
commentary to add.
Does that make me the tiebreaker?
No, because let me see. 2 and 2, yes, it does. Maybe you should have jumped in earlier. It would have been easier. That's what happens because you're a newbie to this.
I agree to keep the recommendation.
Okay. So that is where that one's Richard from Matrix. I can't see if you're on there. I'm assuming your ICN is on there too. It doesn't mean we can't discuss it further, folks. It's just, this is our process. So if anybody, you know, I'm not cutting people off here. I'm talking about the trustees here. Unless somebody says that they want to try to convince somebody for the third vote's not exactly how I thought this was going to play out tonight, but I guess it did. Sir, Trustee Lopez, do you want to go to the next one, or did you want to say something?
No, I'm just curious if you could expand, Trustee Casada, when you talk about the goal that you set a number of years back, and have you met the goal? Can you say a little bit more about that?
Not at this time. We can have a separate discussion for that. To me, the goal at that time, again, and I'm going to make it very brief, it was to protect the members of that family that are going to be affected at that point. We have a, you know, the history. There was an incident, something happened, ICE came over. It was a big deal. It was nationwide. I mean, we were in the news for a lot of reasons, and that wasn't one of them that we wanted to be on. So we took a stand in regards to that at that time. You know, but we can have an offline conversation. I don't have to go into more details.
I'm praying that Mayor Levin is right and that the Biden administration makes it so that this is a rare, very rare
Well,
situation.
they've already made changes, and that's a conversation I've had.
Yeah.
They've already made announcements. They've already made changes. This is not a Democrat or Republican. There have been plenty of Republican presidents who did not use the kind of tone, tenure, and rules that were used in the past 4 years. This plenty of Republican presidents, very similar. And this is a commentary specifically to Biden and the changes he's already made. I'm more than just hopeful. I've already seen the commentary out there. And again, we are talking about a plan tonight. This is not legislation. This is not policy. And if it changes in 9 months, then we change. I just want to remind, we are not passing legislation. This is a plan that was asked for by the governor to be done by April 1. Nope, it's the specifics here is this piece of the plan. About something that we currently do. The request is that we stop doing it by the police department. We are both police commissioners and trustees, and we have a 3-2 that says we would like to stop that at this point. That's the way I understand it. That's the way it should be written. And Dana, you and me both, but I have more than a 50% faith in this. I have like a 95 because I've already seen it being done. I mean, it's already out there. Okay, sir, Trustee Lopez, again, people can still talk about it. I'm not cutting off conversation, but if we're ready to move on, then ready to move on.
Section C, internal operations and practices. Work with the police department to implement new or improve existing community policing efforts, including police officer liaisons with community groups, greater presence at community events, improved and more meaningful presence in Ossining schools, and additional foot beats when the public health situation allows.
Okay, again, I'm going to kick this off. I am in support of that. I actually think the police department is doing most of this. I think the difference is and Mr. Buchanan and I've had a number of conversations about this. I've had some meetings with groups of people. Honestly, for me, this came a lot from a group of Black men about really needing to have a police presence in Black dominant neighborhoods where people know the police, how the tactics, I leave that to the chief of police. There was also a request that there would be more by Hispanic cultural groups so that they know who to go to, so that they have their people that you can't really maybe train 55 people. So the way this is stated, which is works for me, the tactics and how it gets done isn't delineated in this recommendation, but the recommendations and the way the executive order came down didn't say that you had to price things out, that you had to say, you know, how it gets done and when it gets done. The committee did go to that next level, but they didn't have to. They could have simply left things and said, we'd like to see this happen. We could vote on it. They actually took extra steps in many of the ways. And oftentimes it's where we get caught up. We get caught up discussing the tactics, not the essence of the need. The essence of the need is that there should be more. And I've heard this actually pretty much from a lot of members of the community. There should be a tighter fit in addition to social media, at the neighborhood level of assigning police, not one, more than one. Obviously, you can't do all 55 where there's a tighter relationship. There was a great feeling that the chief is actually very connected to a number of community organization, but not the general police force. If I remember correctly, that came up in many, many different forums. So I am fine with this recommendation, opening it up to the rest of the members of the board. Were there commentary, Trustee Lopez, when we filled in? Because I don't think that there was. I think we're handling tonight a lot of the heavier duty ones, the things that are left over, but also things left over from last time that we sort of left out there. So were there any other comments that that need to be discussed? Or
the only comment was from you and Dana saying, agree with the caveat that this has to be in conjunction with the Board of Education update annually and reported publicly.
And that was, I think, just an error on my part. I may have, when I filled out the Google Sheet, copied and pasted another thought.
I think it's because this recommendation says improved and more meaningful presence in Ossining schools. So I think you were referring to that.
Right. But I still think that we've already discussed it, and that just got discussed previously. It becomes redundant at this point. The idea is to have neighborhood policing.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyone else with commentary on this piece?
I just would like to ask the chief on this one. You know, what does that look like, I guess, in regards to if the board passes this as a suggestion for the plan, what would that look like? Because again, it was stated, you guys are doing 90% of this already. But what does that mean for your department itself?
I don't know. I really don't know what to expect at this point. I think that I'm at this point going to defer to the board. It's made pretty clear that you're commissioners, and I think I have to take direction from you on this. I don't have any idea what the board wants at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next, under section C, internal operations and practices, develop a police officer mental health program that includes officer counseling with a teletherapy option and an early intervention program.
So this is so broad and so general for me. There was a point where something becomes so broad. The only research I'm able to do on this is that this has to be done at a larger level, either county or state. I say that because a village of our size, this is beyond our scope, and I've defined that in previous meetings. I don't want to keep saying the same thing over, so I am not in support of this. It's simply too broad, overreaching for a village and a police department of about 55 police officers to take on at this point. Hopefully the state will take on and give us a template to work with, hopefully funding, which is rarely what they give us, and that it be done either at the county or state level. So I respectfully decline on that one. Anyone else?
So I spoke with Westchester County Legislator Colin Smith, who's heading the Westchester County Police reform plan, and this is something that they have that they're talking about on the county level. So I would be in favor of keeping it with language saying work with the county to or something along those lines, recognizing that they recognize the value in this kind of thing, and that it is outside the scope of what we can offer at this point.
Right. I'm good with that. Anybody else?
Well, I imagine that oh, sorry, who's next?
No, please, Dana, go ahead. You don't want to be the last one, remember.
No, I sure don't. I didn't like that.
Gotta learn.
I did kind of like it, actually. But I assume that there's already a mental health program in place as part of a benefits package, right? I mean, so are we talking about expanding it or creating a new one or working in conjunction with the county? Or I just, it is a very, I mean, there must, I can't imagine. I don't want to say, no, I don't agree with the recommendation that police officers should have access to mental health assistance. They certainly should. Everybody should. So it just seems it's very broad, and it needs to be more specific, I think.
Okay. It's beyond what people get today. There is some piece that people get today, but this is much more for dealing with issues of mental health. So beyond what currently is part of what is offered, in my opinion. And we've gotten a lot of input about this, but anyway, I've already said what I said. Manny, did you want to add something?
I wanted to agree with Omar in this, and in regards to we should keep it with the language that we should be looking into this as a county level portion, not just as a village portion at this point, because it's way bigger than us.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Not seeing any.
I'll just say that.
Sorry, Bob. Go ahead.
That's okay. I'll go last. I don't have a problem being last. I agree with Deputy Mayor Quesada and Trustee Lopez.
Okay. So we're going to add that piece in. Support, but it needs to come from a bigger government entity than our own. That's the way I'm hearing it. I got everybody. Okay, Trustee Lopez.
Okay, next, the last one under internal operations and practices, develop officers to receive crisis intervention training.
Okay. This for me is exactly the same as the one we just discussed. This has to be done at a larger governmental portion. And by the way, if some of us have, and I know least one person, Mayor Bramson told me, I had spoken about this with him, about this issue with him, had, because it's one of the larger cities, had said that actually one or two folks from our committee had attended one of the New Rochelle meetings and were asking great questions. And he said, I thought it was interesting because I kept holding up the Ossining Police Department as being something that we want to follow on so many levels. And they're in a small village and we're in a big city. And so we had some further discussion, and this issue is being addressed by a number of large municipalities, including, by the way, New York City. And New York City has split up their commissions by boroughs because each borough in New York City is the size of a city. And then there's the whole city that's doing things together. So to me, it's the scope that is beyond our ability. It doesn't mean that we're not smart. It means that we're a village, and it needs to come from a larger governmental agency, either the county or the state or a few of the largest cities. Yonkers has 200,000 people. It's a nice size city for beyond New York City. It's a pretty large size. They have their own training. They do a lot of different things. They're a very diverse community, et cetera, et cetera. We have some smaller municipalities in upstate New York that are doing something creative. We're doing creative stuff. OPD is a highly progressive, highly advanced police department, especially given the size that we're talking about. So for me, this is beyond our scope. That's just the way I feel about it. It's Gabby, I know you're disappointed. I'm just telling, because I know it's something that's really important to you. I'm just saying, I think it's beyond our scope, but I want you to keep working on it. We have a lot of input coming from a lot of direction. That's the way I feel about it. I'm just speaking for myself. If I want to move on to other members of the board, please.
Crisis intervention training, why can't this be part of the additional training that we're asking for? Is this just so big and different and that it requires, are we talking about creating a crisis intervention team? Or are we talking about training in terms of crisis intervention techniques?
I feel, I'm sorry, am I on mute? So this is a point where the trustee is asking, I don't think Dana knows who to ask, but if Gabby, if you want to maybe answer that, because I think, I didn't mean to point you out, by the way. I'm looking at your face. It's the nice thing about Zoom. We all know each other. This is not a contentious meeting. This is a bunch of people in the community trying to make things better for the community. So what is the intent? What's at the soul of what is being recommended here?
Well, there are the two separate parts about, yes, the officers to be trained in the crisis response. There is a special training that they can get that would be helpful in general, because at some point they will be interacting with patients where it would be beneficial for them, or community members where it would be beneficial for them to have a better understanding about what's going on. But the Cahoots program, which we recommended, and the changes, yes, we did discuss that being more of a county issue. That's not necessarily something that our town can do, but we should still look, or the village can do, but we should still advocate for that.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
So I think we are saying the same thing. We are saying that it's a little bigger than us, but as we've done with other things, say that when it becomes available, not when, because I think other I just said that the other municipalities will have it. I did mention last week that there used to be a mobile unit, but then it got defunded. I mean, like, the budget in the county was awful a dozen or so years. I learned this when I spoke to some of the police officers, by the way, that they actually thought it was a great unit. It was a mobile unit. It's very expensive. So 12 or 14, they couldn't remember how long ago. It was definitely more than a dozen and less than 20. In a budget cut, it got cut. And that's the problem with a lot of stuff, good intentions, and then budgets get tight and these kind of things go away. And that is the same problem we have. I mean, we have a certain amount of money, especially in a village of our size. So I think we're in agreement. I think this sounds like it's one of these, and I'm speaking to Matrix now, that goes into, we will decline this, but we want to do this with the county level. Am I saying it correctly at this point? I think I am.
I'm sorry. I think I also need clarification, like Trustee White. Maybe Trustee Lopez, can you please reread the recommendation? Because it seemed to me that you read crisis intervention training for the police department, not a crisis intervention team. So what is exactly that you're voting on right now? I think that's what Trustee White was confused about, and I think I'm also confused as well.
So the recommendation reads, develop officers to receive crisis intervention training.
Right.
Right, and so,
That's
right, so.
grammatically a weird sentence. That's it's grammatically weird, for one thing, but I don't, yeah, so I develop officers to receive. I don't understand that, but yeah, I agree with Maite. I'm not quite sure what we're.
Right,
We
so
had
if
a
you're, are you voting?
recommendation. Sorry, we had a recommendation for a cadre of officers to receive crisis intervention training. I think maybe there's a typo or a missed
Well, that was a
word
different one.
in what you're reading. Because otherwise, the only other crisis intervention training that we recommended was as part of the broader training program.
As I remember the conversation around, it could be that the cadre piece was with respect to another recommendation, as the mayor was saying, or it could be that when we talked about training in general, the two directions that one can take training is having specialized training for a small number of officers versus, and so those small number would go deep with a certain kind of training versus training that everyone on the department would get. So it wouldn't go as deep, but it would be kind of universal. So universal versus specialization. And I think the result of that conversation was making it so that the crisis intervention training was universal as opposed to specialized. I believe that's the result. Maite,
Right.
is the memory of it?
Right, so it seems like you, okay, yeah, I'll let you.
So, okay, if I can interject here, this is Richard Brady from Matrix. So it is a big commitment to get officers trained at the CIT level. Most of the training programs are 40 hours per officer plus refresher training. So it is a big commitment, but the suggestion was to at least start from a pilot program in which at least one person per shift had that specialized training so that they could deal with people in mental health and related crises in a better way than they're equipped to do now.
Okay, I appreciate the clarification. I have read a lot of the other municipalities. Most villages and towns are requesting that that kind of stuff be added to the training being done at county. And that's what I would go with. I only believe in pilots if you can then afford to do it for your entire staff. You don't do pilots that then succeed and then you can't pay for 55 people to get the training. What would be the purpose? It's, and this I do for a living, so I could tell you that there is nothing worse than running something, being successful, and then not being able to pay for the success. So if there are pilots and things that we want, then we need to have more input into what's happening at county. A conversation, by the way, which I think the county executive is open to, because it has come in a number of plans. While I don't know, and the governor has not stated, and I said this last week, there was never a statement of what he's going to do with all these hundreds of plans. But it is, and I've asked the people in his office, and there is no statement about what he will do. Be that as it may, not as interested anymore in that, because what's interesting here is that the county will look at the municipality requests, and there will be and already is developing stratifications around major issues. And that I think can be dealt with the right budgets and the right amount. Whether they start as pilots and then go on will be something that they look at, because the training for Ossining is done predominantly at the county level, and I think that makes sense. So I now get a little bit of the clarification, but I don't think pilots is something that I would be interested in based on the commentary that I just made. Dana, does this help at all with clarification? Because you're the one that started the role of I need clarification. You're mute. You're on mute.
Yeah, I guess we're recommending that we participate in any countywide efforts to create CIT teams, right? And that we have officers who are more deeply trained in it than others, so that we have people who are especially trained in the crisis response to mentally ill people, right? To the people who could be mentally ill and thus require different treatment, perhaps.
Or a different approach, I think, is the issue. It's a different approach.
I'm certainly in support of that.
Right, but it's the difference of whether it's in the village or the county is what the conversation of clarity is. I also want to
I don't
remind.
know what we can do in the village. I'm not familiar with the trainings for this sort of thing. But if it's 40 hours, I mean, that is a commitment.
I think one of the things that came up last week about similar issue is that we have police officers, and I'm grateful for it, that they stay here a long time. And we have, as a matter of policy, hire from within the community, which is, I've always thought that was great. But after seeing surveys and conversations and focus groups and in separate groups that spoke, it became abundantly clear that members of our community agree, and over and over again, that that's the smart move. But as far as training goes, that's not necessarily done here. And here's the thing. It doesn't help us to do training at a village when the other police officers, we get transfers, we get new cops, people leave, people retire. So, you know, we don't live on an island. We'll train 3 people, and next year, one of them or 2 of them or 3 of them go over to Briarcliff. Now we're training another 3 people in a pilot. Police officers have a right, like all of us on this call, to go for the best job and the best career at the best pay with the best benefits that they wish. And so they're not here forever. And so when we talk about training, it is so important that training and lots of these conversations be done at the county, so you have a better chance. Sure, we get police officers from the Bronx, the city, you know, Putnam, Dutchess, whatever the heck they're coming from, sure. But predominantly they're going to be coming countywide. And, you know, you want to get the police being trained simultaneously at the county, so when transfers occur, that there's consistency amongst police, not have each municipality have sort of different things going on. So for me, that's very important in the training and the hiring and a lot of the stuff that we do, so that we also at Ossining get the best cops that we can, best police officers that we can. I never know if using the word cops is disrespectful or not. Not intended to be. I apologize if it is. The best police officers that we can. And that includes training across the county so that there's consistency. Are we ready to move on, Trustee Lopez? Because I do think we came to consensus here.
I do want to bring to your attention, you have 2 sets of hands up. I'm sorry, Dana, I didn't
No,
interrupt
that's okay.
You have Ms. Cabrera and Romoran.
Oh, yes, I just noticed it. Yeah, okay. Do you know who had their hand up first? Does it even matter?
Jennifer did.
Okay.
I just wanted to clarify, I don't think in any of the places where we were recommending training that we were thinking of a one and done approach. So I do want to be really clear that we're not expecting to train our officers in anything just one time and have that be the end of it. That's not going to be effective.
Okay.
So that's all I wanted to add.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thank you. Ro?
Yeah, I think I was going to say kind of the same thing as Jennifer just said, but also another thing is we do have that shared responsibility, right? Of just creating, you know, even more well-trained officers across the board, even if you train them for Ossining or train them for Briarcliff or the city, etc. But one thing I wonder though is the training that officers are receiving only new recruits, or is somebody that's been on the force for 10 years also receiving some of these things? Because, you know, the reason also why we did this is so that a lot of the training ends up being continual and ends up being, yearly and being up, knowing the best practices and standards and everything that's coming around. That's something that you just learn at the beginning and then, not receive, updates on it. And I think that that's an important thing to note as well.
It is. Chief, do you want to answer that question?
I don't think I can. There hasn't been a set training plan that's been put forward for what this recommendation encapsulates. So I don't know what this board expects for that. I can't implement a plan if I don't know what it is. So,
okay. But I don't think that was his question. His question is there ongoing training for the police currently? Is it, is it just, or is there ongoing every year or continuous? Like if you're 10 years, do you get training every year? Or do you get it continuously as a police officer today?
Yes.
And is that carried by the county or the village? Sorry.
Okay, sure.
Both.
So there is, and it's both.
Yep.
Okay. Does that answer your question, bro?
That does, yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's the important stipulation, right? That this, it's makes sure that this training, whatever recommendation you were to put forth, include, new recruits as well as officers that have been, on the force for longer, to make sure that everyone can go under this. Yeah.
They do. I mean, I only know, not because I'm an expert in it, but when we do the budgets, we get a little bit of a look at things like this. Not deep, but enough to know, and the questions that we ask, that it's ongoing, new transfers, etc. So, I'm sorry. Did I just see a hand from someone? Oh, there you are. Okay, Maida. I saw your physical hand, and I see your little blue hand.
Yes, I just want to clarify, because I also have the same question as Ro, and I just want to make it more specific in terms of the CIT training. And I guess this question would be more for the chief. So if there is a chance that the CIT training will be given by the at the county level, does that mean that all of the officers that you have now or that we have at OPD will be trained by the county as well as the new ones that are going in? Or how does that work? Because my worry is that we just push everything to the county and we can wait 10 years until the county finally decides to, do any type of training for anyone. So how long do we wait for the county to make decisions before we finally do or can? But that was extra. But would the current police officers get CIT training if Westchester County decided to train officers with this?
I don't know, because I don't know what training plan's been put forward. I can't possibly fit it into a budget if I don't know what it is. The answer is that we will do everything the board funds. That's the answer.
So, okay, so I guess I'm not asking the board funding. If CIT training is funded by Westchester County,
it will not be.
Okay, that's not how it works. I think if you were to ask the question, how do things get funded? Like, who pays for the police to go to county to get training? You might get a different answer.
To train the entire department on a 40-hour course, I don't recall what the number is, but it was definitely in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to put an entire department through a 40-hour course. We are not a business that gets to close our doors. I put this in my memo. I've said this in a number of meetings. My answer stands. If there's not a program in front of me, I cannot tell you how to implement something that is merely hypothetical at this point. If the board has something and it's their intention to put it forward and they fund it, we will get it done.
Okay. When we do the budgets, we will be asking for some recommendations. When we see what is being done by other municipalities, we will have a better sense. When we understand what the county's doing, we'll have a better sense. Some of this is new. Some of the training has been going on for a very long time. Some of it is local, some of it is at the county. The county is not just a decision maker. They put courses in place, and every once in a while they change some things based on demand and supply. And we pay for things. County doesn't just pay, we do. We have a certain number of officers, we budget training every year for them. The chief makes decisions about what kind of training, who, when, where, and what.
I'm sorry, so then I think that's where my question I guess now I can clarify my question. If the board is the one that decides, then why is your answer, Mayor, that you should wait for the county to decide these?
Because I want to see what kind of training the county's offering. We don't design training courses. They design courses. They charge for courses. You go
Okay.
to college, the college designs courses. The college will change courses based on the need. What they taught a year ago isn't what they're teaching now. The course costs this much. You want to go to take that course. This is what the course, and you pay. You don't design the course, they do. I think from this and the municipal plans that are coming out, there will be a little bit more, I think, and my sense is that part of the plans will go towards the folks that are doing more training, and they'll see stratification says we need to do more mental health. We need to do that. That I think will be one of the outcomes from the multitude of plans that are coming out. But we in the Village of Ossining do not create course. I don't create just, and I'm using my university analogy because I think that's the closest I can use. Omar, I'm looking for, oh, I see another hand.
Sorry, and Gabby can correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is an existing course that is called Crisis Intervention Training. That's why we keep using that acronym.
Right.
I think there is a course that is already designed, and the question is about having our officers trained in it. So I just want to make sure that that piece of it is clear.
Understood. Understood. Trustee Lopez?
Okay. Next, under section D, hiring and training. Work with Ossining High School to start a program to introduce high school students to the Ossining Police Department.
Okay. What were the questions?
Bob or Trustee Fritchie, excuse me, wrote school system ? And yourself and Trustee White wrote plan to be created jointly with Board of Education ?
Right. So for me, us creating something, the police department creating something would be good. If the Board of Ed and the school doesn't step up and embrace it, I'm not sure how sustainable and effective it will be. These are two boards of elected officials. So we will count on the superintendent and the chief to help design this. I don't know if it's, next month or next year. I personally am in support of this idea, but for me, it's a little bit more clarity around how it gets rolled out and then making it sustainable. But the way it's stated right now, I'm in support of it, but we have to fit it into the 101 other things that are going on and prioritize things. I mean, this is a 67-page report, right? There are a couple of dozen recommendations at least that are coming out. So, it's going to get prioritized amongst others. That'll be the next step. So that's sort of my commentary. Does anybody else have comments on this?
Well, it's interesting because on the one hand, we're talking about assessing the presence of police officers in the schools and whether they should be there. On the other hand, we're saying, well, let's do a program where kids learn more about what it means to be a police officer, right? Is that where, or they get to meet the police. They seem opposed to each other. You see what I mean? Like, on the one hand, we're like, oh, should they be in the schools? And on the other hand, it's like, let's start a program in the schools to introduce it. You know what I mean? Now I fully think we should wrestle with this and kind of figure it out. But I think that the more you can breed familiarity and understanding and empathy in anything, you're going to go a long way, right? So, I mean, I support this, of course. I support dialogue, right? I support kids understanding that this role is a guardianship role in a lot of ways. And there's a tension between guardian on one hand, warrior on the other. And it's a tension that's there. And I, just want to say that I understand that tension. I respect the police. I appreciate the police. I am thrilled that when I need them, they are there. I never would demonize the police, ever. And that if we can develop a sense of empathy between the parties, that can only be good. And I know it is a very stressful time right now for everybody. I admire the police officers in this village and their ability to do what they do. We hear a lot about what they do that nobody else hears about, okay? And it is good work. It is good work. And I personally could never be a police officer. I have way too high a level of anxiety. The split decisions you have to make are, you know, change lives, including your own possibly. So I am for anything that that gets people talking, you know, and I just wanted to put that out there.
I think your point, and this we all wrestled with, that one part of the plan says not to have police in the schools and the other part says to have them under different scenarios is very tricky. But you know what? This entire initiative is amazingly difficult and tricky. And the name of it in and of itself is already, from my point of view, when I first heard it, is problematic because it implies and assumes certain things that I don't think, at least for me, I don't assume at all.
Right. It implies that you know, if reform is necessary, it means something isn't working, right? Now, we have a good police force, and a lot of people have told me that, and I agree. And so you're put in this position of where you're trying to improve what's already pretty good. I think the things that we're doing in terms of implementation, this will continue to be a conversation. But I'm seeing, you know, I mean, we're making some bigger decisions, but I think a lot of it's also incremental and improving what we have. And whether it turns out to be an improvement will remain to be seen, right?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. This one is a little tricky just in the wording of it.
If I can, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, please.
As I see it, I actually don't see, I mean, I can see why you both believe that they are intention. I personally don't think that they are intention, and the reason is because the earlier recommendations are not to have the police in the schools, but to evaluate the role of the police in the schools. And it may be that a result of that evaluation is let's not have the police in the schools. It may be that the result is let's have police in a different way than we currently have, et cetera. So it's an evaluation of the role in the schools. And I think there's a recognition of the importance of, because in particular we hire locally, to have folks that are engaged with our police department in ways that are meaningful. And so having school resource officers is one way, but it could be that that's too passive. It could be that a more active way of doing that would be to develop this program in order to get the message out. What is it that OPD does, how you can become involved, that kind of thing. Trustee Fritchie is a firefighter, and there is a program for young kids to be able to get engaged with the fire department. Yep. Specifically for this purpose, because they recognize the earlier that you can expose kids to an organization, the more of a chance you have that they'll get interested in it and want to do it later on. And so I think that's in line with the kinds of recommendations we have to want to diversify our police force and make it more reflective of the community.
I appreciate that perspective. Thank you. Anyone else? And now you reminded me that we still have to vote on the fire. It's not on the calendar. You have to remind me, Bob, after this meeting. We have to get it on a calendar for the fire department. Anyone else? Thank you. So I think we've concluded that. I'm being mindful of the time because I'm actually looking. I think we're doing okay. Trustee Lopez, next.
Next under hiring and training, utilize existing community resources to better understand how to connect with residents.
Could you say that again, please? I'm sorry.
Yep. And actually, I'll just note for this one and the next 3, so there's only 4 more left. All of them are ones that don't have additional comments. We just haven't been able to talk about
Right.
them. Okay. So the recommendation is utilize existing community resources to better understand how to connect with residents.
It's very vague to me. I don't know. It's vague.
I'll tap Richard if you can speak.
Yeah, thank you.
Recommendation.
The idea here, and this one was suggested within the working committee, was that there are groups within the community that represent certain interests, like the LGBTQ community, that could help sensitize, familiarize police officers with dealing with that community. The same with ethnic groups, et cetera. So that was the idea behind it.
Okay. I mean, it's not a policy or code. I don't know how, in what world would we say no to that?
Well, can I just add to that then?
Sure.
So it's saying that you don't have to rely on seeking 8 hours of training or 16 hours of training or whatever on how to interact effectively with LGBTQ residents, for example. Is that you've got resources within the community who can help you for free often.
No, I agree with that. In what world would I say no to that? So the question is, when you do a plan, like, what's the plan? Is it to meet once a month? Is like, it's a plan. So what would be the plan?
It would be,
I'm not being funny. I would say yes to this.
I agree with Dana. It's very, very vague.
I think that this suggested recommendation ties with the one that we discussed earlier on community policing. That does have a liaison.
Now I get it.
Okay, and so work with those groups that you've developed liaisons with.
Mayor Levin, if I may interject this as well.
Okay.
One of the things that happened a lot of with these recommendations that they piggyback off of each other, right? And that's the tricky part when kind of going through each one and everything, because they may depend on another one way or another. This is one that I feel like, for example, the example that we always come back to is that the LGBTQ policy or the thing that was down for that was not really didn't have the right language, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where that would come, right? Going to those organizations. However, recently, the last meeting you all had, you said no to that, public policy period, which is also where these would basically tie it in together.
Okay, but this would tie in actually to what we did say, which was that at least the LGBTQ would be involved in rewriting policy. So I'm just.
But there's so many other policies, right? And it's the idea to do that for every policy was the original intent.
No, I understand, but I would suggest at least in this one it be coupled with it. We'd have to delineate every group and figure out how that might work. So that, I'm trying to figure out how that would be a plan. Okay. I mean, there are a lot of groups. So
if I can,
I'm trying to figure out how I'm trying to think of the wording so that it's a plan rather than just a concept. Because the concept, I think, in what world would we say no? But I'm trying to think of in a format of a plan.
A little bit more, if that would be helpful. So in the actual the written plan, this was part of the hiring and training recommendation. So it was a way to look to the community for trainings that we might not be able to pay for. let me read a little bit more, and I think it'll be a little bit easier to understand. So it says, and this is on page 62 of the
thank you.
5 version.
Thank you.
So it says, utilize existing community resources to better understand how to connect with residents. For example, the Loft LGBTQ Community Center has conducting training with other local offices and municipalities. So that's the type of thing that we're looking for, is to get trainings in creative ways besides those really expensive formal trainings. I mean, it is a formal training, but it's developed by a community center and maybe more cost.
So more involvement from community groups, we would have to delineate. And you're not saying you have to do it in one day. You're saying, create communication with assigned community groups that can work with the police department. It is similar to neighborhood policing. This is neighborhood input to training, maybe formalize a training, etc. I'm okay with that, but I didn't read it that way.
Yeah, when you just see that summary, it's not super clear.
Well,
but it was really.
We have to summarize at some point because it's hard to read through 67 or 64 pages now. So we might want to just categorize a little differently. Trustee Lopez, the keeper of our Google sheet here. Does that make sense? And then Richard will have to update it correctly.
It does. I'll specify that it's
okay.
Training.
Okay. Everybody has a role. It's great. Teamwork happening right before your eyes. Anybody else? Trustees? That was okay. Omar, next.
Yes.
Trustee Lopez, excuse me. I'm being way too informal here. Sorry about that.
No problem. If it was a work session, I'd be Omar all day long, but please, Trustee Lopez, please. Okay. Next, again, under hiring and training, develop a plan to hire more bilingual officers or encourage fluency.
We've been trying to do that, and the chief has been at the forefront of that with different county-wide organizations. You saw the recent production that he was actually the producer of, or director in the recruitment, and you see the different organizations. If you read the organizations that were involved, there are a number of county organizations across different ethnics, gender, identification, etc. So I would say yes to that. We just didn't get to these, I think, is why we're still discussing it tonight. So I'm good with that.
I'm as well.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, I'm good on that one too. To me, the challenge is obviously we have a list, sure, and we are limited to that list. So as much as we can, as much as the mentality is to have the diversity and to have the bilingual portion, our police department and even ourselves are very limited to that. So unless the community comes out and takes the test, and I'm talking about the bilingual community comes out and take a test, we are going to have whatever is on the list. So I want the board members to keep that in mind, and even the committee to keep that in mind, that it's not because of lack of effort, it's just of lack of people taking a test. So
I think so.
And I'll jump on that because I've said it a number of times. Can't be hired if you didn't take the test, if you don't get on the list. I applaud them. I applaud the chief for what they've done so far. Matter of fact, my stepdaughter has signed up to take the test. So, because I pushed a message. Correct me if I'm wrong, chief, that we are of a residence list right now. And we are staying a residence list from my understanding, because if you go county, you stay county and you can't go back. So that's my understanding of it. So if there's the opportunity to bring a bilingual in as a transfer, then that's the other option, correct?
It's the board's intention, but that's the way I see it.
Okay.
Yep.
So
okay,
sign up, take the test, get it out there.
Yeah, I mean, this is not corporate America, where every year people graduate with degrees and MBAs and they just go and pick people. You have to have a pool of people in whatever category you want, to choose from. They have to take the test. We've said this so many times. We said it earlier in the meeting. Cannot impress upon the community more, please. It's for many people, and the chief has said this himself. It's a good career. Not for everybody, but more than the people that are applying now. And I know that everyone's looking at this, so this is the time. Sir, next.
You
Trustee
have
Lopez?
Jennifer Cabrera with her hand up. I'm
Hello,
sorry.
Jennifer, again.
Hi, I'm so
Again?
sorry.
No, not again. You got your
I'm
hand up
adding
again.
so much.
I'm looking
Um,
this way and you're in my gallery over here. So I have a very large screen in front of me. Go ahead.
Yeah, I did want to mention, I think this was also part of that training recommendation that was really long with that list. So I think the emphasis on this part of it is to encourage officers to become bilingual, take Spanish lessons if they can. So that's really, I think, what we were trying to emphasize with this particular
Yep.
line, but also hiring more bilingual officers when it's feasible.
Yeah,
I want to let you know that the chief has actually had that for a number of years now. We actually pay people to go take tests if they can pass, so that they're like, I'm not getting it right, but to be bilingual officially, he's actually been sort of on the forefront of getting that through. It may not shine or spotlight in when you look up the information, but it is something we actually budget every year.
Yeah, so Mayor, that's the stipend that we have for bilingual officers that we add to that as part of the PBA contract as well. And just keep in mind, and we tried this before, and I believe a lot of people didn't take advantage of this, but many years ago when Rosetta Stone was available, when some of the stuff that they first came out, that was out there. The village paid for a license for anybody that wanted to take Rosetta Stone and take advantage of that, used it. And I think, I don't know, Maddie, no. Okay.
Yeah, Maddie's saying yes.
Yeah, so I know you were shaking that. I think my recollection, maybe less than a handful of people took advantage of that, and that is, if anything. So after that, again, it's not because we didn't want to encourage, it's just people just didn't want to take advantage of that situation. So you know, again, it depends on the person.
But I'm going to go back to education and communication and having more venues of communication. So it's very possible that people, including everybody in the gallery here, and I didn't know about it, I've lived here for many years, didn't know about it till I became a trustee. So we got to get the word out, and we got to let people know that things are out there. So that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, one of the things that I have learned, this may not be a perfect analogy, but if you are a medical doctor, you have the option to have that put on your license plate that you are a medical doctor. And I'm sure that if you're driving down the road, sometimes you've seen it. That indicates on somebody's license, not license, but license plate, that they are a physician. And they do that both for, I don't know why, like the benefits of you're driving around and people go, oh, look, a doctor. But also some of the reasons, well, I have heard why doctors don't do it is because then if there's an accident, then then you have to stop because you're a doctor and you can see that on your license plate. I think that it's a similar kind of situation. We do have more officers that speak Spanish and other languages on the force than are officially listed as having those languages spoken. I don't know the exact benefits and drawbacks of taking the test and getting the stipend and whatever, because we budget for, I think it's 5 people to get the stipend, and every year we never reach the 5. And perhaps the chief can shed more light here, but that's my understanding is that that's the current situation. We actually do have more officers in reality than even what the report shows because of that dichotomy of how many people actually take the test.
Did you want me to give you something on that?
Yeah, could you shed some light there, Chief?
So I gotta distinguish us from doctors that don't want to put their indication on their license plate.
Please do.
There is nobody here that secretly speaks Spanish and won't tell. I do know doctors who don't want you to know they're a doctor because they want to avoid liability. I've never met a cop who speaks another language and holds back. So maybe just a bad analogy, but absolutely not the case for here. I can say that with all confidence. There's a stipend for 6 officers to speak a second language. I believe 6 people get it. I've asked the board every year since I've been chief to open that up to as many people as we can get. We've heard that that would happen. I'm not a part of the collective bargaining agreement, so I don't know what's been agreed to.
How many people took advantage last year?
I believe 6.
All right, so we'll open it up to more. I mean, we've never actually closed it off. So if we need 10 or 20, for us, it's always been.
Well, it has been closed off because we've had officers that have wanted in the past and couldn't get the stipend.
So there, we just learned something new. So for the budget meeting this year, we'll open it up to a larger number. Already a positive outcome. We'll just open it up. Great.
Okay. Thank you. Last 2, we're almost home. So under section D, hiring and training, the Westchester County Police Academy should be encouraged to implement enhanced training as recommended for the Ossining Police Department.
You got to read that one again. I feel like grammatically I'm missing something.
The Westchester County Police Academy should also be encouraged to implement enhanced training as recommended for the Ossining Police Department.
Okay, all we could do is write to them and say, these are the things we would like from what I'm hearing here. Is there something that I'm not hearing, that I'm missing? What is the essence here that I may be not understanding? Or maybe this is one of those that was supposed to get coupled with something else.
This was to cover that recommendation that I think you had when I don't remember what meeting we had, but you had that idea that that the academy should be teaching some of the trainings that we're asking for. So this is to cover that.
Right, and I think it's in there already, actually, specifically. I think it's in one of the other ones that we discussed. Because it
no, we added it as a separate recommendation in itself. Since
but now I see it. I see. So I'm going to go yes on that one. I think I will have to not only do this plan, but write the county executive and write the HR department and write the academy and hope that others do as well from other municipalities to request that this be done more proactively. So any other comments, questions, thoughts? We're accepting this one from the look on people's faces, but I'm not seeing actually or hearing. Okay.
Yes, Mayor, correct.
Omar, are you reading something, or you have comments, or you're not clear? I'm seeing a question mark.
Yeah. So this is I've under promised and over delivered here. Our last recommendation is a copy of the one that I just read. It's listed on there twice on the report. So it's
okay. So that was the end.
So that was the end.
Okay. I feel like applause are necessary, or at least a martini. Oh, thank you, Gabby. Just doing the hand thing. They should not only just have a blue hand, they should have a clapping blue hand when people complete a Zoom meeting. So that's it. And Matrix should have everything, and we will be able to vote on it. Now it's a matter of just collating everything. I want to thank everyone that was involved. I feel like I should do it in alphabetical order, but I don't have the alphabetical order. Obviously, all the members of the working committee, the former Mayor Garrity, who started with this, and then I came in January, all of the members, those that showed up for hours and hours, less so for those that didn't show up. I will also write a note for a couple of people that did not participate to the folks that are in charge of them, and I'll do that separately. I would like to thank everybody. I mean, I don't know if it's 100 hours or 200 hours of work. I know how much the trustees have also worked on this. I appreciate the PBA raising their hand and coming to a meeting. I appreciate the officers who were on this, the chief who was on this committee. I appreciate Matrix for the work that they did. It was the first time we've done anything like this to an executive order, so we all went through something all for the first time. It is as I had said last week, and I think we all recognize this is not only a tough national issue, it's a tough local issue because we are getting hit by a storm from a national level that hits us locally. And I'm not sure all of our issues are the same as they are at West or in the Southeast or in the Northwest or wherever else in big cities or little towns. They're quite different. One of the smallest towns that has a police chief in upstate New York was done really quickly because I've said this before, 55 miles, 38 people, and half of the members of the municipality are from the same family. And it's perfectly legal there. So they're in fact keeping the whole town going. They didn't take a lot of time. It took them no time to do this. And then there's the city of New York that has commission upon commission upon commission, and also a huge infrastructure. And here in Westchester, we're in the middle. You know, we are a large village. There are towns, there are villages, there are all sorts of municipalities. But I think Trustee Lopez had said this, it's not a race, but we would put this plan and this committee up against any of the big guys and the little guys in Westchester, because you guys did really helped us out a lot. Already good things have come out of it. Already things are on the website that weren't there before. Already we just agreed to put in the budget based on what the chief just said to open up the stipends that I thought we had enough. I guess we didn't. So I just learned something new 5 minutes ago. That to me is a huge success from committees. You don't get that many successes. So I just named 2 or 3, and that's tonight. I do appreciate all the trustees in the work. I hope you see the amount of work that everyone in this gallery and the hours spent. I find that it was well worth it. And I understand that there were a lot of contentious meetings in the committee because this is an emotional topic. And the way it was set up and brought down was handed to us on a very emotional level. But for me, it was well worth it. I hope that you all found it to be well worth your time. I'm going to have the trustees speak. I do want to say that in addition to voting on it next week and the many other initiatives that we have, I am hopeful, not promising, hopeful that we will also have some next steps either next week or the following in our meeting so that we know what happens after this. So I want to also set expectations fairly. So that's what my thought is. I don't know if other trustees want to say anything or if there's anything that we've left off. If Matrix wants to add anything that we've left off, this would be the time before we go to the rest of the legislative session. Anybody?
Is there time for public comment later?
Well, the way the agendas and legislative sessions work, at the end of this, it's not, there is a thing called public comment. It's not a discussion, it's just comments. And again, I think I said it earlier where there was 3 minutes or 4 minutes, which is a part of the setup of a legislative session.
It's visitor recognition.
Thank you. Visitor recognition, which we do at every
Folks who have their
legislative session.
hands up need to wait to the end of the meeting?
Yeah, I said that earlier. Yeah. Yeah, because this is not, we've already had all the public meetings. This is, we're the step after that. It's like a baton. You don't go back, you go forward, and we need to bring it to closure and vote on the plan next week. Does anybody want to comment before we continue with the rest of the meeting? Trustees?
I'm good. I'm good right now.
You're good?
Yep.
Everybody's good? Everybody's good? Anybody on the gallery? I'm going to go, anybody on this gallery? You know who you are. You're all panelists. Is anybody on this gallery? Anybody? Not just trustees. Okay, going once.
I guess I just, if we could.
Oh, Gabby, you snuck in there on me. Go ahead.
Mayor. Yes, I'm sorry. I do want to say thank you. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for having us on this committee. It was a lot of work, but it was a wonderful, I'm really glad with what we've done. And I appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And everybody in the committee. I'm going twice.
Mayor 11 now. This is Ro.
I'm sorry, Ro.
No problem. Yeah, I'm not. I think this has been clear. I'm not as proud and as happy of with this as Gabby is. I felt that as you mentioned before, this whole process was very contentious, and I felt that it was way more contentious than it should have been for such a noble and such a good cause. I appreciate you taking the time to hear us out and for I think really bringing it home, I guess you could say. I appreciate that. One thing I do want to encourage all the trustees is I think it's incredibly important going forward after this is done to still wear the anti-racism glasses, right? With everything that comes forward involving municipal legislation and police, etc., because it's something that's important, because I have a feeling that when we may talk about this with Black men and women, they may not feel as heard as they deserve to be. So going forward, I do encourage that you legislate with those glasses, and you always take that into account, especially when it comes to police, because I think that there's still voices out there that we didn't hear as loudly as they should have been. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And I think that's fine. I've already commented, and you know that, both in writing and publicly, and it's all a movement forward. It's not a once and done. Some people keep saying that it is. I'm not one of those people. So I appreciate that. Anybody else? I'm going for the third. Okay. We're going to continue with the rest of the meeting. Jamie, are you moving the panelists back to attendees, or how are we doing this? Oh, I think I lost the crowd. Nope. Oh, Maddie, are you hosting now? I'm sorry.
I am not, but if that is what the board would like us to do, we can go ahead and...
I have no problem. I just wanted to pass and say, you were brought in like for this part of the agenda. Generally, it's a legislative session. There's government, there's a process in place. So respectfully, it's just not worth all of the tinkering right now. But I do ask that you mute and that we move on with the rest of the legislative session.
Okay, moving on to new business of the board, resolution authorizing settlement. Cecilia Davis. Whereas Cecilia Davis of Ossining, New York filed a notice of claim against the Village of Ossining on or about March 10th, 2021, and resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Ossining authorizes settlement of the claim of Cecilia Davis for $8,227.32. And be it further resolved that the Treasurer of the Village of Ossining is hereby authorized and directed to pay to Cecilia Davis $8,227.32 in settlement of the aforementioned matter upon delivery to the Village of Ossining of a release to the village for settlement of the claim. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments on the board? Stuart, is there anything you need to add? I didn't even ask you.
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Martha?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Authorization for the mayor to sign an agreement with an employee. Resolved that upon review by the village's labor council and corporation council, the mayor is authorized to sign the agreement with employee 1635, last four numbers of social security number. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Martha?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to visitor recognition. Is
Mayor,
there
I'm
any-
sorry, Mayor.
Oh,
Martha, I
sorry.
apologize. Mayor, we have that one additional resolution. Martha, you
Please.
don't have it. I have it here. I will read it and I will send it to Martha in the morning.
Thank you.
Authorization for the village manager to sign agreement with Kellard Sessions Consulting, 500 Main Street, Armonk, New York, 10504, to provide professional engineering, wetland, and planning consultant services for the Village of Ossining. Resolved that upon review by the Corporation Council, the village manager is authorized to sign an agreement with Kellard Sessions Consulting, 500 Main Street, Armonk, New York, to provide the village with engineering, wetland, and planning consulting services for a 3-year term commencing on or about April 1, 2021, in accord with the proposal dated February 18, 2021. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? I'm going to simply comment that recently, Ossining, after has caught up with our neighbors and has wetland legislation, policy, etc., and that now it's included as part of our process, which is why you heard in the resolution that Color Sessions also has the wetlands capability. So I appreciate the staff putting that RFP out. And Martha, you're on.
All those in favor?
Oh, I'm sorry, Stuart. Aye.
That's fine. Thank you. Martha, back to you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to visitor recognition. Is there anybody here who would like to address the board on any issues not related to the agenda, but are relevant to the common good of the village? Anybody who wants to say something will have a 3-minute opportunity, and Jamie will be taking the time.
So we have 3 hands up. Jamie, do you want to go through that? Because that's usually what you do. Is she there or is it Maddie?
I am here. I can
Was
keep the time.
muted. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay.
So what I'm going to be doing is bringing people over. I just wanted to announce the order in which people are coming over in,
Okay.
because I can see we have 4 people right now, and
Okay.
I'm not quite sure if the names that are listed on here are the correct names, as we've found in the past. They're just the pseudonyms.
Well, 3 of them are for sure.
Yeah, so one is Brendak, B-R-E-N-D-A-K. The next one is Patricia. The next is Jermaine Smith, and followed by Leah Nelson. So B-R-N-D-A-K, I'm going to bring you over now. And then when you come over, if you can introduce yourself. After you've introduced yourself, I will start the 3 minutes. And
Introduce yourself and please tell us relationship to Ossining would be helpful.
No problem. All right. Bren K., you're coming over now. Please introduce yourself and unmute.
I unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Jerry Smith. My name is Jerry Smith. I'm a long-time resident of the Village of Ossining. We attempted, and this is concerning what you're speaking about now, we was attempting for a month when Mayor Gary was there to be able to be a part of this process. I have not heard during this whole thing about anything with accountability. If you look at what the governor was saying, if you look at the legislature and what they were saying when they wrote this executive order, what the intent was. The intent was we got to stop Black people being killed. Now, I appreciate all the stuff that's going, but it seems that every time we have Black people getting killed, we're going with these. We're going in different directions. You know, I've tried on many occasions to get in, and it just don't seem that the village understands what the purpose of this thing. It seems like you take somebody to the hospital that has cancer and you're working on his headache. All the stuff you're talking about now is great. That was stuff that needs to be done, but it don't go to the court need. The whole thing was we need accountability for people that commit murder. I know we have the Police Supervision Review Board. I remember that. I was part of that when we set that up. The same situation. A Black man got killed, and they set up this Supervision Review Board. Has no power, cannot investigate people that commit murder. They can only investigate misconduct. So we Black men, I don't feel safe. I didn't hear anything that was said and done by this municipality that would make me feel safe. Talking about every other ethnic group feeling safe and having a feeling safe with police officers. Black men doesn't feel that. I didn't see that addressed here. And until that's addressed, I think we're missing what the whole purpose of the executive order were. I looked up your facilitator. Their profession seems to be more in business consult. We need to bring somebody in here that knows something about police. How do you handle a situation where Black people getting killed? This is something I know the mayor said, well, this is stuff, we're not like all the other people out. I think you're wrong. We had 2 or 3 Black people killed in Ossining in police custody. So it's not something that we're not a part of. We needed to have plan that was submitted that helped to prepare Black people for being safe, feeling safe in their homes. We having a lot of stuff about people.
Mr. Smith, I'm sorry, but your 3 minutes are up.
Can I just finish one thing?
That's with the mayor.
Can I finish one thing?
Yeah, my apologies. I was on mute because I have sound in the back. Please do.
Okay. We're right now having difficulties with ISIS, and I understand that. People who come into the country illegally are saying that we don't want you to be part of that. I can agree with that. And I'm gonna say that as a Black man, we want the same thing. We want to be able to feel safe like those people. You haven't shown me that. And for that part, I have to write an opposition to the plan and request that we need to do something. People understand that this is just more about making the community better. It's about Black people who have been treated bad for years and about us feeling like we're part of this country. So to that end, I have to write an objection director budget.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Smith. I appreciate your input and your participation tonight. Jamie?
Yes, I'm going to bring over Patricia. If you can come over, unmute yourself, tell us your name and your relation to the Village of Ossining. Thank you. So Patricia, you're here. Once you unmuted.
Hold on. Okay,
that
my
doesn't
name is
count.
Patricia.
All right,
Sorry
now,
about that.
No, that's me. So when you're done introducing yourself, I'll begin the timer. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Patricia Hayes, and I am a resident of Ossining. Okay, can I start?
Yes, please, please.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna try to go quickly. A couple things that I have questions about, or I'm not sure. I don't understand why decisions are being made based on relationships, current relationships, or political leaders now. For example, we talked about the CPR, the CPRB discussion, like the first section, the recommendation to allow investigations on for the community review board to that whole process. There was a statement that it was already shown that this has happened before, where they weren't able to review an actual case because it wasn't allowed, even though you say you have this system in place. But the statement was made because of a backlog, and because there are no current backlogs now, that can never happen. It's crazy to think that if something already happened, it's proved to happen, that it won't happen again. And then again, on section 2, based on the relationship with the chief and the superintendent, we're basing policies off of current situations, making statements out of things that can change, because Biden's president, Trump could be president in 4 years. Why are we making policies and decisions on things that can change? You know, it doesn't matter what policy, who's president, we shouldn't be, because of the state of the current situation in Ossining. I think the police department is great, right? But that doesn't mean we shouldn't make policies that have nothing to do with the chief of police might change. I love the chief of police. I think everything that we're doing in Ossining is great. I don't like the board right now because of the way that the policies, because of the way that this whole plan has rolled out, but it makes me seem like I'm against the police. No, I don't appreciate the way the board has rolled out this whole executive order. And I can't believe that they haven't even mentioned any of the Black community. It's like outrageous to me. All of this policies, all of these things are great, but that's not what the executive board was meant to do. The executive order, yes, I'm sorry, I'm rushing. And another thing, I'm very frustrated. There's no way that I could talk and say what I have to say in 3 minutes. So you know what, I'm gonna calm down and stop. I'm trying to rush because you gave me 3 minutes to talk and I can't even prove a point. So you know what, I'm gonna stop. I took notes and I wanna say other things, but I can't because I'm rushing and I'm not even making my point across. The only thing I know is that I echo what Jerry said and what Rose said, and thank you for acknowledging the truth. The Black people have not been represented. I don't feel that the board is paying attention. I don't feel that there has been any empathy. When they talked about ICE today and how it's a sensitive topic, I felt the empathy of the mayor. I felt her being sensitive to the community. I have not felt that for the Black community. And it's really frustrating to give me a 3-minute time limit. And I think it's insensitive of the board to go on when you guys can cut. There's a time limit for us, but there's no time limit for you. It's 10:34 and I had to wait for 3 minutes and you're gonna cut me off and I can't even make my point. So the bilingual officers, what about Black officers? Officers in the police, in the high school, what are they gonna do to help the relationship? For how are they gonna change the way they look at these Black young men as criminals? How are they gonna change that? I have not heard anything like that. It's real, it's real disheartening not to have heard anything like that. I think the word Black community was mentioned at least 4 times before even Ro mentioned anything. And that's all. I don't even know what to say at this point. That's all I have to say.
It's hard. I want to make a few things clear. Number one, this meeting tonight is a completion of months of work. There have been surveys, public meetings, meetings with different constituents, including Black men. There are the members of the committee, it's about 18 people, had there have been lots of conversations.
You're going to review what I'm saying, but I don't need anyone to reply to me. I'm replying to you guys.
No, I understand.
On the end, you're gonna justify everything that I said, but I was at those calls and I understand that. You guys are actually saying that you're voting on sections of this executive order. You're supposed to vote next year, but you guys are already talking next session. But you guys were already, and that's why I'm just making a statement. I don't need, I was there at the calls.
Okay.
You guys are going to try to reboot what I'm saying, but the community needs to know. Because it all sounds very good. Everything you said sounds wonderful. I don't want to dispute what you guys are trying to do and that this is all good work. But that does, again, it's like Jerry said, you're not really addressing the problem. So this is wonderful work. Great, congratulations. But you didn't address the problem. And I still don't, and if you don't acknowledge that, and if we don't try to change that, it's a disservice to the community. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know who's on next.
Okay, Mr. Jermaine Smith, I'm going to bring you over. If you could please give us your name just in case it's not you, and if you can give us your relationship to Ossining. Again, it's 3 minutes. And oh, Jermaine, you don't have your hand up anymore. Oh, okay. I'm going to bring you in even though you're in there. Okay, hold on one second. All right, Mr. Smith, you're here. Can you unmute? Do you hear me?
Yes, I hear. Can you guys hear me?
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I had to mute it. I lowered my hand so I didn't forget. So you guys were saying. Just quick. Just echoing some of the things that we have. I understand the mayor saying that this is a process, but from the beginning, from the first start, and be respectful to Mayor Levin, you weren't part of that process in the beginning because we were fighting with Victoria to try to be on this process, within this process from day one. Then there was this notion that there was this application process, which we proved was not true, and so there was some confusion from day one with this process. If we look at the intent of the executive order, it says very clearly that because of a long and painful history of discrimination and mistreatment of Black and African American citizens, predominantly Black and African American men, there needs to be some changes. And this process was to develop practices that better address particular needs of communities of color to promote public safety and build community engagement that fosters trust. So within the executive order, it speaks directly to what the intent of this order was. And just like Jerry Smith said, and just like was repeated a couple of times, there's nothing in this report
that speaks to the intent of the order. We've heard a lot of recommendations. We made recommendations and we spoke about things that were not included in this order. Even the recommendation to talk about indemnification of for officers, it speaks about supporting that effort. The idea of doing a duty report speaks to the officer that witnessed mistreatment or murders at the hands of a police officer. It doesn't speak directly to the officers that are committing these crimes. So there's nothing speaking directly to accountability or any kind of systems of justice for the people that are, these are not, once you commit a crime, you murder someone at the end. Now, we're not talking about officer justified shooting. We're not talking about them shooting someone who's armed and shooting back at officers. We're talking about officers that have gone to court, that's been proven guilty of committing murder or committing a crime, and him being held accountable for that. So there's a difference in what we're talking about. And just like Patty just spoke about, this perception of us fighting against the village board and the municipality gives a perception that we're against the police. I think a lot of us are not against the police. We have relationships with the police officers. We're in favor of the police officers that are doing their jobs. We're not in favor of the police officers that are not. And that's very far and few between. And that right now, and we don't see it in Ossining, but this is a preventative measure. This is supposed to be putting things in place so that just in case something happens, we have the nuances of how to hold people accountable for that. And this is what we're missing in this whole entire conversation. We talked about, even within this report, there's still some misleading and some information that's not being reported properly when we talk about the number of surveys that was sent out and how, you know, it's the wording of it is that this is an exceptionally high number of responses to survey. 800 people out of 25,000, that's about 3%. That's a low survey response rate. So the way we're wording some of this is this from the beginning of this process to the end, it has been excluding the Black men and Black voices in the community, and it has been misleading and rewriting narratives of the actual way this is interpreted. When you have people on the working committee that were in the room making decisions, speaking to the disservice that this process has done, then that should show you that there's a problem with the report and the process in itself. This is not just the Black community saying this. This is not just Black men who's asked from day one to be part of this conversation. This is coming from the own working committee that was hand-selected by the mayor to go through this process, who's saying that we did not do a service to the Black community. And if that doesn't speak to the nature and the intent of the miscarriage that's going on with this process, and I get it that we're going to do things after this, but this was a one-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have all eyes on this process, and this was a mandated process from the governor that says we need to address injustices that are happening to predominantly Black and African American men, and we did not do that. And so when we talk about this process, I think we have to be very careful to not be so dismissive of people who are hurting and have questions about this process because we went through a 4-month process or however many month process. In the beginning, it is Ossining decided to do this behind closed doors and put together an RFP process and requested proposals without any community input. And until that was found out and discovered and people put back, did you form this working committee? So there was months of opportunity of working on this that was missed because of that window, and that's not reflected in this plan. And the plan you talk about, oh, the village went out and put together a working committee and then reached out to a facilitator. That's not what happened. So if you put everything in perspective and you look at this, and let's stop glossing over what was actually done, the way this was put together and the way the community was excluded from this is not doing a service to this process. It's not doing the service to the community we serve. So I think, you know, even with some of the conversations going back, we understand that this is not a public forum. People are passionate about this and want to speak to it, and we just want the opportunity to speak. And, you know, some of the correspondence when we talk about this, and at the beginning of this meeting, we talk about we're not voting on the plan, but what you are voting is you're voting on aspects and parts of the plan that are then going to be, that have been accepted as of right now. So when we say we're not voting on the plan, we're talking about semantics at that point, because you are voting on the plan, but you're divvying it up into each individual recommendation. And then next week, you're going to say, okay, we voted on the entire plan. Do we accept all of the edits that Matrix put in from our previous votes from the last few meetings? So in all actuality, the semantics of it is you actually voted on the plan tonight.
and the next week is just closing out this process. So I know we're short on time. I want other people to speak, but I really want to stress the fact that the Black community is not happy with this process. We have not been included. The two Black men that were originally on the board were a police officer and a clergyman, and we had to fight to get an additional Black man on the board. We were asking for 3 Black individuals from the community at large, and that was not accepted. So again, I understand you came on after the fact, January 1st, we have new people as part of this process, but we just have to be cognizant that this process is not representative of the community, and I hope that your own working committee speaking up to that adds value, since the Black voice is not being heard and that value is not there. So thank you.
So there's lots of public conversation. I respectfully, Mr. Smith, will agree with some of what you said and disagree. You two use syntax and semantics in a different way that I don't think really represents the whole picture. I will say that if I were to do it, and I've said this numerous times and I'll say it again, if I were to do it again, there would be more Black men. There were mostly Black women and people of color on this committee. Your numbers are off, but I'm not going to sit here and have that conversation. We've discussed this numerous times. You have been involved in the meetings. I don't think all the way from the beginning, but pretty close to the beginning on a regular basis. And you and I have spoken, and Omar and you have spoken, and we did meet you and a group of Black men because of the input that you had and the actions that I then believe in my first week, actually, in January, approached that. So some of the stuff had some flexibility to it. So the process is never perfect with something that's perfectly new. And that was my commentary. The process of committees dealing with these kind of initiatives are tough, and not everything goes smoothly, not everything goes well. And including the consultants that were used were actually not the original consultants. We've made that public knowledge. We don't have to put everything in writing. The document's already 60-something pages long. We have said it publicly. All of our meetings are recorded, even the ones that didn't have to be recorded. We asked the groups that we were discussing things with if they are willing to be recorded, and almost all, not all, but almost all said yes. They're all on public record. They're all available for people to view. So nothing I'm going to say here is going to change. Your perspective is slightly different than mine, but I will agree with you that if I were to do it again, there would be more Black men in this committee. But having said that, a lot of other pieces do fall in place, and the survey did have a large response rate. There are 25,000 people, but there are not 25,000 adults that fill out a survey in the village. The number is much smaller. And for a survey like that, it got a good response. And you know this, you saw this, just like you, most of the respondents actually speak highly of the police. There were points of differentiation about accountability and trust, and you're right, and that's what we're trying to work on. Nothing's ever perfect, and nothing's perfect when you do it at first, but we'll get better at it. So I am going to move on to the next person who I can't see who it is, Jamie.
Sure. It is Leah Nelson. Leah, I'm going to bring you over. If you could please tell us your relationship to the Village of Ossining. And after you've introduced yourself, I'll begin to time you for 3 minutes. You'll hear the buzzer go off through the phone. Through my headset. Sorry. Thank you. Okay, Leah, if you can unmute yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Leah Nelson. I am a member of a local house of faith, as well as a member of a couple of groups in Ossining. You know me. But I just want to say that I just think you keep talking about how great OPD is, and I'm sure they are great. I really, you know, and they're great until they're not great. And it's a department, it's made up of human beings. And it just takes one wrong guy to do one wrong thing. And that's why we need to make it
very much less appealing to shoot Black people. And if we make it so the police don't get away with it by indemnifying the municipality instead of the municipality indemnifying the police, then this will make it a lot less likely that shootings will happen. So that's one thing, and I just wanted to urge you to adopt that policy, and I'm urging all of New York to adopt that policy. So the other thing I wanted to say is, when will the adopted recommendations be posted after the vote, and where will they be posted? And the other thing is that from what I understand, you've elected not to have a new police board of commissioners. And I'm just curious who will be responsible for making sure the reform policies are implemented, as well as recommendation number 19, the OPD making regular reports on a variety of metrics. Who will that be done to? Is that to the board, or I just, I also want to second Jerry and Jermaine's opinion about lack of Black male representation and the objective of EO 203. And that's it. Thanks for hearing me.
Thank you. I'm not responding back and forth, but I do want a point of clarification, which is as far as the CPRB, I'm not sure what you meant, but there is a CPRB. That's a standing committee that continues.
No.
The discussion was whether there should be police on it or not, and the plan will reflect, based on the conversation, that there will not be voting members of the police force on it. There will be liaison from the police based on conversations that we had. So there is a CPRB, and the police reports, the police commissioners, so reports are done to the board. Or the police commissioners are also the board of trustees, the way our charter is written in the village. It's been like that for a very long time. I mean, I'm just making some points of clarification. Not really discussing, arguing with you or anything like that. I'm just, so based on what you said, I'm just clarifying a couple of points. And I appreciate your input.
Mayor, would you like to move on?
Yes, I didn't know there was somebody else.
Yes, there's a.
Okay.
So you have Aaron, who I'm going to bring over, and then Mr. Smith Sr. wants to speak, but I know that we only allowed to do one time.
It's not about being allowed. We have a policy about the way legislative, I don't like the words allowed or not allowed.
I'm just reading, I'm sorry, I'm just, in Zoom it says allowed to talk. I apologize.
Yes, I get that. We have process and legislative for fair chance. We've already gone through all of the conversations. Every person gets the same amount of time. Could have spoken earlier in the meeting, could speak at the end of the meeting based on what's in front of us. And so, Aaron, is that Mr. Moore? Is that Aaron Moore? I can't see.
It just says Aaron, so I'm going to bring over Aaron.
I don't know who that is, so bring Aaron, and I think that will, and that seems like the last person.
Okay, so Aaron, I'm going to bring you over. If you can introduce yourself and give your relationship to the Village of Ossining. Thank you. If you can unmute, please.
Yes, Aaron Moore. And
Good evening.
Hi, everybody. Yes. So I'm going to start by saying my take on Ossining's police reform is that you have detoured from the original intent of the order, the executive order. The order specifically states that municipalities should change its policy and protect the innocent, unarmed Black men. I don't see that being handled appropriately here. You have sidetracked and talked about ISIS and immigration.
Nowhere in the order does it mention ISIS, nor does it mention immigration. Now, I have to say that I agree, those groups have a voice, but to take center stage and put the original intent of the order on the back burner or out of the picture entirely is completely wrong. Accountability is the key here. I mean, I don't see how you guys fail to get that. I mean, if an individual, it's like running a red light. If I ran a red light and I never got a summons or a ticket, I'd continue to run red lights. That's not going to happen, though. Well, that's the same thing that needs to happen as far as accountability with criminal acts by policemen. You have, one other thing that I need to say about the polls, somebody said something about the surveys. Those surveys stink. Those polls actually stink. They do not pertain to the problem here. You have wasted $60,000. This man is $60,000 richer for doing nothing, if you ask me. Now we are at the 23rd hour, and you're giving me 3 minutes to speak. Whoopee. Okay, I got an hour left out of the 23rd, out of the 24 hours. There's an hour left. Thank you very much. I'm done.
Okay. I'm waiting for you to be done. I don't want to cut you off.
I'm done.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Again, this has been going on for months. Matrix was chosen actually by some members of the working committee and agreed to by the board after discussions. This has also been made public a number of months ago when that happened. I'm sorry you don't feel that they were good or worth the taxpayer money. I don't have any response to that. Genuinely speaking, some people think they were good, some people think they were mediocre, and some people think they weren't good. I do get your larger point, and I appreciate your thought on it. It's not necessarily something I thoroughly agreed, and I've already had that conversation, so I think that we've talked about that at this point. I do think that the executive order is pretty wide and deep, and different municipalities have different definitions about it. I think we've spoken to that as well. Is there anybody else that is here to speak? And frankly, it's not just about this. The way the legislative sessions work, this is any public member who wants to be heard about any topic that relates to the Village of Ossining.
So we have someone that already did speak that has their hand up. I think Stuart can talk to if this person wants to speak on a different subject, if they can speak. Or
if it's a different subject, they can. If it's the same, we're not going to, and I just really am loath to break from what we do at every meeting, because next week we're going to have people say, but you did it last week. So, and there have been so many public meetings and so many opportunities, not to mention 24/7 hours in the week and day and months of writing to the BOT, which many people have done. So as their representatives. So if it's who is it? Is it a different topic?
I don't know if it's a different topic. I'd have to bring him over.
Okay.
It's Mr. Smith Sr.
Okay.
So,
Mayor, I should just note that our practice has been it's 1 3-minute. It's not 1 3-minute on a particular topic.
Oh, okay then.
Okay then. That's why I asked Stuart.
Mr. Smith, I am going to stay with the way, if you want to reach us, our emails are bot@villageofossining.org. We will be back on Wednesday, next Wednesday as well, for a work session, for a vote and a special session, I think. Is there any other business for tonight?
Not that I'm aware of, Mayor.
Okay. I think that, Martha, I think this is the time. Do we have executive session after this, yeah?
Nope.
No, we don't. Oh, because we did it earlier. Okay. So we have nothing after this. I think it's just a matter to go for a vote.
Yes, no, so I need a first and a second to adjourn the public meeting.
To adjourn the
Moved.
meeting.
To adjourn the meeting, I'm sorry, to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? Martha?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Ladies and
Opposed?
gentlemen, I appreciate everyone staying with us. It's almost 11. I appreciate all the work. I look forward to seeing all that are concerned and want to participate next week as well. And I wish everyone a good evening. Thank you.
Good night.